Okay, yeah, we're good to go.
Thank you very much, Dan. Okay, members, good evening and welcome to this meeting of full council. Before we commence with the proceedings for this evening, I can confirm that Braintree District Council has adopted some basic etiquette rules for this remote meeting, and these are as follows. Please only speak when the chairman has invited you to do so. Members, please let the chairman that you want to speak through the chat function. The chairman will introduce speakers in the order that the request for speaking has made, unless there is a point of order, thereby we will give way to the point of order. Please minimise all distractions while you're in the meeting. Members are asked to mute their microphone when not speaking and consider turning off the video to reduce any interference on the auto feed. Please bear in mind that there may be a lag between speaking and the other attendees hearing you, so please bear this in mind when you make long speeches or interrupting. When referring to officers' reports, please quote the page number and paragraph number. We have part 2 business this evening on the agenda. That is the confidential items, and members, it is your responsibility to make sure that your venue and connection is private. If you lose connection at any point and are unable to rejoin the meeting, then please call the meeting facilitator and we have provided you with contact details. Please only use the chat function for the purpose as we've asked for this meeting, that is to raise points of order or to request to speak. The chat function is subject to the Access Information Rules, including Freedom of Information, EIR, and is also subject to data protection, rules of defamation, and the Council's Code of Conduct. For this meeting, councillors are identified with a prefix of councillor before their name, with the exception of the chairman and the vice chairman of the council. There are officers in attendance, and these are identified with the prefix of officer before their name. Officers will only speak when invited to do so. There is a minute taker for this meeting and 2 meeting facilitators. I can confirm that this meeting is quorate and can proceed. I now hand over to the chairman, Mrs. Kilmartin. Thank you, Mrs. Kilmartin.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Hello, everybody. Good evening. I'm Councillor Angela Kilmartin and the chairman of the council. And on my screen, you can see that it just says I am the chairman. I will be chairing this meeting of full council, and I'm going to be fairly strict about it. We've got a lot of business. I would like to open this first virtual meeting, which is quite historic, I hope you realise, of the full council, by welcoming all members and all the public who are viewing this meeting via the council's YouTube channel. I'm being assisted by a meeting facilitator who will help me identify when people want to speak and manage the notifications through the chat function. Members, I obviously can't see all of you, which I find rather sad. But I do ask that you use the chat function to indicate if you wish to speak or if you wish to raise a procedural point. Can I please clarify that during this meeting, when asked for agreement, silence will be taken as the assent on those items to note. Where a vote is required, these will be conducted using the poll function. So if we're all set, I'll proceed to the first item of business, which is apologies for absence. And at this point, I think I just have 2, do I?
Chairman, that is correct. You have apologies from Councillor Ritchie and Councillor Renman.
Thank you very much indeed. I hope you all heard that. So if there's no further apologies and no one else has any to send to me, then I'm going to go to item 2, which is the minutes of the previous meeting. For this item, I'll be seeking your agreement. Therefore, silence will be your assent. Now, do any members have any objection to the approval of the minutes of February the 17th as an accurate record of the meeting of full council? I don't think so.
Chairman, I'll ask to speak.
Oh, yes. Councillor Abbott, carry on.
Yeah, yes, it's in reference to minute 70. It's a matter I've raised before, and I thought we'd agreed as a council that questions will be from, sorry, my phone just rang true.
I've turned mine off and just remembered to do it.
People seem to know when a meeting's about to start. Oh, it happens to be timed again. Sorry. When backbench members of the council ask a question of cabinet members, I thought we'd agreed that very briefly, I appreciate it's more work for officers, that very briefly their name would be noted against the item. If you look at minute 70, there are no names mentioned for anybody asking questions of cabinet members. Thank you, Madam Chairman.
So then, are you agreeing or disagreeing that I can sign these minutes, Councillor Abbott?
Chairman, if I may,
Yes.
Councillor Abbott, we will pick up that point for you to make sure that we indicate the members who spoke during that item of full council, and we'll send out a set of corrections. Thank you, Councillor Abbott, for bringing that to our attention.
Thank you.
Are you going to do that later this meeting or at another date?
The minutes will be amended and circulated after this meeting, but if members can give their agreement to the content of the minutes, if that's the only procedural point and they're happy with the minutes, then members can continue to approve the minutes as an accurate record, subject to that alteration of citing the members who spoke during that item.
Right, so do all the members agree with that? In which case, please keep silence. I think that is assent. Thank you very much, Emma. Thank you, members. So we're going to proceed to item 3, which is the declarations of interests. Now, do members have any disclosable pecuniary interest, other pecuniary interest, or non-pecuniary interest that they wish to declare this evening? If so, please state the item number and the nature of your interest. Please indicate you wish to speak in the chat function. Councillor Walsh, you wanted to speak?
Very briefly, thank you. On item 8, the cycling motion, a non-pecuniary interest, I'm an ordinary member of the Cycle Club in Coggeshall, the Randonneurs.
Thank you. Councillor Abbott.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Items 8 and 12 as the member of Essex County Council, and in item 12 I'm also going to mention the Essex County Council Climate Change Commission, of which I'm a member. Okay,
thank you. Councillor Unsworth.
Sorry, took a moment to unmute. Yes, I'm a member. Item 6, a member of ordinary member of CPRE.
Thank you, Councillor Butland. Councillor Butland, do you have any item to declare?
Yes, I do. In respect of a number of items on the agenda, predominantly items 5, 6, 8, 9, 11 and 12, as a member of Essex County Council, as a director of the South East Local Enterprise Partnership Limited, a non-remunerated director, and as a director of North Essex Garden Communities Limited, also a non-remunerated director.
Thank you. Now I've got Councillor Unsworth who popped in again. Councillor Unsworth?
The same one. I sent it to the chairman and to you.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Beavis.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. As a member of Essex County Council, predominantly items 8 and 12. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. Councillor Hicks.
Good evening. Yeah, non-pecuniary interest in page 43, Horizon 120. I have people that I work with that are interested and moving on to that site.
Thank you very much. Councillor Gabrielle Spray.
Thank you, Chairman. I'll declare an non-pecuniary interest in items, let me make sure I get this right, items I think 5 and 6 to do with the North Essex Garden Communities, as I regularly attend board meetings, but I am a non-voting member. And also item 13, Horizon 120, as part of my portfolio, I have been present at discussions, presentations about it, but I will take part and vote. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Now, I don't appear to have anybody else on my chat screen. Is that all of you with something to declare?
Sorry, Madam Chairman.
Hello, yes.
Cunningham, sorry,
yes.
Here. Apologies are belated. Following on from Councillor Mrs. Spray's declaration, I will declare non-pecuniary interest as I chair the Horizon reference group.
Right, anybody else? Last call's coming up. No, fine. Then I'm declaring that there are no more declarations. And I'm going to proceed to item 4, which is public question time. There are 2 questions for public question time this evening. The first question is from the Straits Mill Action Group. So can I please ask Chloe Waite, who's our governance officer, to read this question? Chloe Waite?
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Can you hear me clearly?
Yes, thank you.
Okay. Good evening, members. For those of you not familiar with planning policy, I will start by quoting an extract from the National Planning Policy Framework. Paragraph 56 states that planning obligations must only be sought where they meet all of the following tests. Number 1, necessary to make development acceptable in planning terms. 2, directly related to the development. And 3, fairly and reasonably related in scale and kind to the development. In January of this year, the Council gave approval for a development of 1,000 dwellings on land east of Broad Road, known as Straits Mill. This application was granted subject to the applicant agreeing to the following planning obligations. 1, public transport facilities. A contribution of £830,000 towards the new town centre bus interchange. 2, completion of upgrade schemes to the Marks Farm roundabout, the applicant being required to contribute the full costs of these works, £3.143 million. How is the requirement for a new business interchange, a new bus interchange directly related to this development? As planning obligations can only be used to mitigate against the impact of a development, why was it considered appropriate to require this development to fully fund the improvements to the Marks Farm roundabout? In July 2019, approval was given to a development on land west of Braintree, Panfield Lane. The revised application reduced the amount of employment land from 8.73 hectares to 0.95 hectares. The surplus land now being used for additional residential dwellings. Approval was given as the council was satisfied that sufficient employment land was allocated elsewhere in the draft local plan. The application was granted subject to the following planning obligation. Employment initiatives contribution of £2.925 million. What impact was this obligation mitigating against? Thank you, Madam Chairman. That's the end of that statement.
Yeah, thank you very much, Straits Mill Action Group, for submitting that question. And I think we can ask Councillor Spray. Can I ask you to provide a response to that, please, Councillor Spray?
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I'd like to thank the Straits Mill Action Group for putting forward this question this evening. It will be given careful consideration and a written response will follow in due course. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you very much then. And I have the second question. This is from Rosie Pearson, a resident of Patterswick. So again, can I please ask Chloe Waite, our governance officer, to read this question? Thank you again, Chloe.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Only a few days ago, I, together with residents from the north, west and south of the district, launched a petition. The petition calls for Braintree Council's leader to do the honourable thing and resign. Astonishingly, 1,000 people have signed the petition already. There is extraordinary anger in the district about the Garden Communities project. That anger is fuelled by the repeated failure to heed warnings about the fatal flaws to the local plan, by riding roughshod over the local communities, and by the waste of £8 million of taxpayers' money. I myself have regularly attended meetings to raise legitimate and evidence-based concerns. Questions have never been answered. Concerns I raised have now turned out to be correct. In addition, people are angry that our villages and rural district have been changed forever. This is because speculative developers are making hay from the endless delays to the plan. Residents deserve the truth. It is not true, as Councillor Butland stated in last week's newspaper, that the public were behind the garden communities. Consultation responses, petitions, letters to the paper, place cards and public meetings demonstrated that. The suggestion of a democratic mandate is also remarkable given Conservative leaflets did not mention garden communities in the most effective wards. It is not true that the failure of garden communities will lead to sprawl. That sprawl is already happening. And as a result, with the unplanned speculative applications and Section 2, there is no need for further sites to be brought forward. Section 2 needs to be examined as soon as possible. I am sure the Planning Inspectorate will help to find a pragmatic solution as they are obliged to do. The only way to begin to restore the trust of local people is for the leader to resign. My question therefore is, will Councillor Butland do the right thing and resign? If not, please confirm that the petition will be debated at the next full council meeting in line with the procedure set out on the council's website. Thank you, Madam Chairman. That's the end of that statement.
Thank you, Chloe. So thank you also, Ms. Pearson, for submitting that question. And I think, as I did before, I'm now going to ask a councillor to reply. And Councillor Butland, can I ask you to provide the response, please?
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I can confirm that as and when the petition is received, it will be considered under the petition procedure rules of this council. So as and when that petition is received.
Right. Thank you very much. And again, thank you all of you for your questions and your responses. So that question concludes this item. And I'll now proceed to the next item of business, which is item 5 on your agenda, to receive any announcements or statements from the chairman, that's me, and or the leader of the council. So I have got written down simply, I have no announcements for this meeting of full council. And the reason is I've been locked down. I've been shopping once weekly, I've been walking once daily, and I have appeared at no chairman's events, and I have missed it tremendously. But that is the end of my announcements, sadly, because normally I do like to give a little list of where I've been and what I've done, but I've been shopping. I would now like to invite Councillor Butland, leader of the council, to make any of his announcements. Councillor Butland.
Madam Chairman, like you, I've also been locked down, but involved in a number of meetings, which I hope I've kept members up to date with the various postings that I have sent to all members. So I have nothing else to add at this stage.
Thank you very much, Councillor. I will now proceed to item 6 on your agenda, which is to receive a statement from Councillor Butland, which is an update on the local plan. Item 6, I'll shortly invite Councillor Butland to make his statement. So can members who wish to ask a question of Councillor Butland in respect of his statement indicate so on the chat screen during the statement as it's being said, using the chat function. So can I please now invite Councillor Butland to make his statement? I should remind members this is not a debate.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Madam Chairman, I wish to make a statement to Council on the letter that, together with Colchester and tendering councils, we received from Mr. Roger Clues following his examination of the Shared Strategic Section 1 plan. It is important at the outset to be clear that this is a post-hearing letter from the inspector. It is not his final or indeed his interim report. There are still several stages to go before the process is complete, and I will set these out later in this statement. The letter is both detailed and, with 58 pages, lengthy. Nevertheless, I will try and capture the main elements as succinctly as possible. Anyone who has read the whole letter will know that there is much in it which is supportive of the considerable work that was put into producing the plan. In paragraphs 12 to 14, The inspector acknowledges our high aspirations for the quality of development at the proposed garden communities, and acknowledges that the plan's policies are consistent with the NPPF's guidance on the way in which sustainable development can be achieved through the development of garden communities. In paragraph 21, he concludes that each of the authorities has met the duty to cooperate in the preparation of the plan, and that they have met the relevant procedural requirements regarding consultation and submission. Mr. Clues then goes on at paragraph 23 to start to consider the soundness of the plan. He reminds us that at paragraph 182 of the 2012 NPPF, advice is given that the soundness of plans is to be examined by reference to 4 criteria. These criteria are: 1, that the plan has been positively prepared, that it's justified, that it's effective, and that it's consistent with national policy. The inspector states unequivocally that, and I quote, "The plan undoubtedly meets the first of these. It has been positively prepared with the aim of identifying development and infrastructure requirements for the plan period, and it includes the proposed garden communities which are intended to make a substantial contribution to meeting those requirements, both in the plan period and beyond." In examining whether the plan is justified, is effective, and is consistent with national policy, he examines several issues. The first of these is the housing requirement figures in the plan. Having considered the household and population projections, employment forecasts, and market signals, he is of the opinion that, and I quote, "the plan's housing requirement figures remain soundly based." For Braintree, Madam Chairman, this means delivering a minimum of 760 homes per year over the planned period. In paragraphs 48 to 59, he considers how the plan has dealt with the habitats regulations and concludes that he is satisfied that the requirements have been met. Moving on to look at the sustainability appraisal, the inspector at paragraphs 72, 78, and 79 states that he is satisfied that the authorities tested reasonable alternatives to the garden communities and alternative spatial strategies appropriately. Further, in paragraphs 102 to 108, he confirms that the authorities' work on issues such as water quality, the effect on the historic environment, air pollution, and the impact of overflying aircraft were considered and assessed appropriately. Turning to infrastructure needed to support the garden communities, he referred to his earlier letter in which he wrote that, and I quote, "greater certainty over the funding and alignment of the A120 dualling scheme and the feasibility of realigning the widened A12 at Marks Tay is necessary to demonstrate that the garden community proposals are deliverable in full." He acknowledged that the road infrastructure, including the A12 and the A133 link road, have been secured. However, the full build-out of the development at the Colchester-Braintree borders and the west of Braintree would depend on the dualling of the A120, and he noted that funding for that has not yet been confirmed. The nub of the inspector's concern about the plan are contained in paragraphs 132 to 152, where he considers the proposed rapid transit system, paragraphs 157 to 177 relating to house build-out rates, and paragraphs 192 to 254 on the issue of viability. Regarding the rapid transport system, the inspector considered that the route section options that we worked up were in sufficient detail to demonstrate that a bus-based RTS with priority over other traffic for much of its length could be provided. However, he had concerns that some capital costs may have been underestimated and raised issues with part of the route linked into the garden communities in Uttlesford, particularly as a result of the decision by Uttlesford District Council to withdraw its local plan at its meeting in April of this year. The planning inspector also noted that while part of the route linking Braintree and Colchester was not due to begin until after the plan period, a source of funding for that scheme could not currently be identified. Two important issues have influenced the inspector's view as to whether the two of the proposed garden communities are viable. These are the house build-out rates, which, Madam Chairman, that is how many houses could be built each year during the plan period, and the planning policy guidance on viability, which makes it clear that understanding local plan viability is critical to the overall assessment of deliverability. While accepting the methodology of the viability assessment and the inputs into it, he did not believe that the garden community should be planned on anything other than an average of 250 homes per year across their development. This meant he disregarded all other viability scenarios that provided or proposed more than 250 a year. He also said, Madam Chairman, that a 40% allowance should be made to all infrastructure products. The impact of this decision, or opinion, sees the land value at Colchester-Braintree borders fall below that which the inspector considers would be acceptable to a landowner, and leaves the west of Braintree proposal, in his view, only marginally viable. He writes in paragraph 266 of his letter, and I quote, "I therefore conclude that development of the tendering Colchester Borders Garden community would enable the delivery of sustainable development in accordance with the NPPF's policies. If the unsound Colchester Braintree Borders and West of Braintree Garden communities proposals are removed from the plan is capable of being made sound." Given this conclusion, the inspector suggests two ways forward. First, accept his main modifications, which will include the removal of the two garden communities, or two, withdraw the plan. As a council, we will not be able to decide what to do until the inspector sends us his interim report, which will include the full list of modifications. Once we have the modifications, as a full council, we will be able to consider his proposed changes and what it will mean for our district. We will then need to determine whether to A, accept the modifications and send them out to public consultation, B, withdraw the plan, or C, consider a challenge or an alternative approach. Madam Chairman, I can't tell you the date when that full council will be held as yet. This will depend on when we receive the interim report with modifications from the planning inspector. I very much hope, however, that this meeting could take place later this month or in early July, but I will advise members as soon as possible. It will also need to align with our colleagues in Colchester and Tendring. Madam Chairman, if we were to decide to accept the sound plan with the inspector's modification, it will then have to undergo a further 6-week period of public consultation. During this time, it will of course be open to all, both proponents and opponents, to make further representations to the inspector. I draw the attention of all members and interested parties to paragraph 277 of Mr. Clues's letter, where he states, and I quote, "In deciding which option to pursue, the North Essex authorities may wish to bear in mind that it is possible that the responses to public consultation on the main modifications may give rise to the need for further hearing sessions." I need to make one thing clear, Madam Chairman, on the process. It isn't possible now, and it hasn't ever been possible, to examine Section 2 of the plan before the examination of Section 1 has been completed. The Section 1 plan contains key overarching policies, including the total number of homes in the district, the employment figures for each district, and other overarching policies, including design, sustainable development, and infrastructure. These must be dealt with before the detailed policies on Section 2 can be considered. Madam Chairman, before finishing, I want to briefly address the funding of the North Essex Garden Communities project. Every decision made by Braintree District Council has been a decision made in full council, usually at its yearly budget meeting. To date, a total of £950,000 has been allocated by this authority to work on the project. Similar amounts have been allocated by the 3 partner authorities, and the government has supported this project with £3.7 million worth of funding. At this time, I will not speculate on the future of NEGC Limited. This is something which the 4 authorities will need to consider carefully and come to a decision on when the way forward is clear. Madam Chairman, I've endeavoured to make this statement in as factual a manner as possible. However, I cannot pretend that on this side of the chamber that there is not great disappointment with the contents of the inspector's letter. We are proud that 3 planning authorities of different political persuasions have been able to work in a highly collaborative manner and to come forward with what, in many people's opinion, is a highly imaginative and forward-looking plan. I will happily take questions, Madam Chairman.
Well, thank you very much, Councillor Butland. I do have a long list of members who've indicated they wish to ask a question, and I will repeat, it is just a question you are asking. It is not a diatribe of all sorts of other items to go with it. So please keep your question to simply being a question. And as a matter of courtesy, I would love to ask Councillor Abbott to ask his question first. Thank you, Councillor Abbott. How are you?
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I'm well, and I hope you are too.
Thank you.
So my question is in 2 parts to the leader. The first part, as I pointed out at the time in 2018, the BDC administration had the opportunity to take BDC down a different path on the local plan, namely Inspector's Option 1. We believe this would have saved money and would have helped to prevent speculative development across the district. So why, in July 2018, did the leader and his colleagues take the decision to continue work on the garden communities, or as we prefer to say, the New Towns project, with the leader saying at that time that the evidence update would be complete in 3 months, when in reality, 2 years later, the local plan has now been found unsound for a second time by the inspector, and we remain at risk from further speculative development.
That's your question. Thank you very much.
That's the first question. I've got 2.
Have you? Oh, better be quick then.
Do you want me to ask the second one now?
Yes, I think so. Would you like that, Councillor Butland, or shall we do it?
Yes, quite happy to take the second one, Madam Chairman.
Thank you. Go on then, Councillor.
Thank you both. Secondly, and like Councillor Butland, I've read the letter in full and very carefully. When the leader says in his open letter to residents that, and I quote, some of the judgments the inspector made were based on fine margins, is he really talking about the deeply unviable financial position exposed for West Tay? And is he really talking about the rapid transit system, which we warned repeatedly last year would not work as set out in the evidence base? Now, Councillor Butland, you said a number of things about what the inspector has said, but you didn't quote this. This is what the inspector said about the rapid transit system, and I quote, "It is entirely at odds with the plan's aspirations for integrated and sustainable transport networks."
All right, thank you very much. Councillor Butland, do you like to have a go at that?
Yes, I'll come back, certainly. Thank you, Councillor Abbott, for those 2 questions. The first one about the action in 2018 and why didn't we withdraw from that. I would remind Councillor Abbott that this was a partnership and still is a partnership between 3 authorities. Had we have withdrawn, that would have put at risk the aspirations of other authorities. And we should bear in mind that as far as our colleagues in Colchester and Tendring are concerned, the inspector has roundly supported the garden communities east of Colchester. And I wonder whether Councillor Abbott shares my view that that is a right decision by the inspector. So if we had withdrawn, the partnership would have fallen down. We have tried, as I said in my statement, to do something together, something quite different. And that was why all authorities at various times have acted in the interests of the wider community and not put their own parochial issues first. And I think that's very important. And I hope that's something that we will continue to do as a partnership as we think of the way forward. On the issue of the fine margins, it is a fine margin because the inspector, in terms of viability, has chosen examples which he thinks are right. Now, I suppose the ultimate test will be whether the market accepts that those are right. And if he thinks that West Tay is totally non-viable, then I would not expect any of those looking to promote there, either landowners or other developers, to be coming back with any proposals. Time will tell if we decide to accept the modified report of the inspector, then it will be open to, as I said, to proponents and opponents to come back. And that will then may raise issues, as the inspector himself suggests, which he may need to look at again. On the issue of the RTS, there is no doubt that it was, to a certain extent, reliant upon the garden communities in Uttlesford for the peace between east of Braintree and Stansted. And clearly the withdrawal by Uttlesford District Council of their plan dealt a pretty fatal blow to that. There are other ways, however, that it would be possible if we were continuing, and I'm not suggesting for one moment, but there would be ways in which that link could be fulfilled in the future. But those are issues that we will need to discuss when we've received the inspector's interim letter with his modifications, and when we meet as a full council to discuss the ways forward.
Thank you very much, Councillor Butland. Next on my list, I have Councillor Wrench. Councillor Wrench.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chairman.
Off you go.
The inspector says that no more than 250 houses can be built per year for the viability assessment. Is the leader aware if this figure has been exceeded in any other developments?
Councillor Butland.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Thank you, Councillor Wrench. Yes, there are examples of where 250 has been exceeded. Generally, the larger the development, the higher the build-out rate. But if one wanted to look fairly close to home on where that has been exceeded, then if the inspector and myself were to just go about 10 miles down the road to Bewley Park, he would see a development there, which in the first 3 years so far has always exceeded 250 houses per year. So yes, there are others there. And that's about the fine margins which Councillor Abbott referred to and which I did. It is an opinion, and the inspector's opinion, he's perfectly entitled to hold that opinion, but there are other areas where a build out of more than 250 is currently taking place.
Thank you very much. I have next Councillor Pritchard.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, Councillor Butland, for your summary of events in relation to item 6. I had read, and as you, I think, confirmed, that we're going to have to add potentially to our local planning section 2 somewhere between 500 and 1,000 homes. Could you just confirm why that would be necessary?
Madam Chairman, could I ask if Councillor Spray, the portfolio holder for planning, could respond in detail to that question,
yes,
please?
Councillor Spray.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. Thank you, Councillor Butland. Thank you for your question, Councillor Pritchard. Yes, the simple fact is that the local plan still requires us to provide a minimum number of homes in the life of the plan, which is up to 2033. And that number hasn't changed from last year when I think I answered similar questions to this from other councillors. We still have to plan for a minimum of 14,320 homes. However, it is considered prudent, at the very least, to have an oversupply of that number. We cannot rely on every single site that is currently in section 2 coming forward, and we cannot rely, even if every site were to come forward, every home being built. That was certainly the case last year, and of course with the current pandemic and the impact that that may or may not have on construction, maybe even more so. So we need to allow an additional buffer. We think that will be between 500 and 1,000 homes. The exact number will be determined when we come to consider section 2. And quite simply, there is no point in us submitting section 2 to an inspector, which will be a different inspector to Mr. Clues, only to have that inspector turn it down because the numbers don't stack up, and that inspector might consider there would be an undersupply of homes. So it's a prudent measure, and we will be looking at the numbers, as I say, when we come to examine, to have a look at section 2 before it's submitted. Hope that answers your question. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I now have Councillor Thorogood. Councillor Thorogood, your question, please.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chairman.
You might speak a bit nearer to the microphone if you can.
Okay, I'll speak up a bit. Thank
you. That's better. Great.
Is that better?
Great.
Okay. Until a planning authority can learn from the mistakes it has made in the past, can residents have faith in how it will take planning policy forward in the future?
Councillor Butland.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I don't accept that we've made a mistake. I think we have put forward plans which haven't been accepted by all, but that doesn't necessarily and doesn't mean that they are wrong. So I don't accept the premise of Councillor Thorogood's question.
Thank you very much. Now, next on my list, I have Councillor Pell. Hello, how are you? Ask your question.
Good evening, Chairman.
Hello.
I'd just like to say that on behalf of Housestead Residents Association, we have also supported the principle of the garden villages. In Housestead, we have great problems already, and we know that if all these extra houses are to be found, we are concerned how many will come Housted's way. Our road infrastructure can't take it. We don't have an invisible bridge that goes right over the town to get past the church. And what our question is if we have to accept all these extra houses, would Housestead be considered along with the other two towns to have an equal share, and would we also be consulted all the way to let us know what is happening and what isn't happening? So thank you, Madam Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Butland then.
Thank you much, Madam Chairman. I do understand the concerns of Councillor Pell and her colleagues and residents in Housestead. I think it's too early at the moment to start speculating where any houses may or may not have to go. And we haven't, as I say, as yet had even the interim report from the inspector, and we haven't yet made a decision of the three options that would be available, which one to take. But I do understand Councillor Pell's concerns, and certainly if we were to move forward with a modified Section 1 and a Section 2, we certainly will make sure, as we did on the original ones, and as the inspector confirmed, we will make the appropriate consultations.
Thank you very much. Now, next on my list, I have Councillor Lynn Walters. Councillor Walters, please.
Good evening, Madam Chairman. Thank you so much. Councillor Butland, do you have any idea at all of what the view is for the MHCLG on this? Is the inspector's letter, in the inspector's letter? Have you any idea on that letter?
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Thank you, Councillor Walters. I have not had any direct conversations with MHCLG at this stage. I would merely draw the attention of members to the statement that was issued by the Ministry when it said the Ministry of Housing, Communities and Local Government has applauded our ambition and has said it will consider whether this plan raises any questions for how large sites are examined in the future. MHCLG remains committed to supporting new garden communities and helping these schemes to get off the ground. Now, those are very strong words, I think, to come from a ministry. However, we are three authorities who have committed ourselves, different political persuasions, as I said, to help the government achieve its housing targets. We have been prepared to move forward. Most plans get turned down because authorities don't want any houses. This is quite different. Clearly, I think there is a problem with the planning process itself. but that will be for central government to determine. And at this stage, as I say, I've not had any direct discussions with MHCLG.
All right. Thank you very much, Councillor Butland. Councillor Beavis, I have next. I do have a long list of people. You'll all just have to be a bit patient. So, Councillor Beavis, off you go.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. And my question to the leader. I mean, my interest will always be with people and communities. And there's much confusion being expressed from local residents about the local plan process. Would the leader please consider, when the time is right, a cross-party communication delivered to every home in the Braintree district, that in simple language that is easy to understand and relate to the next steps? Thank you, Madam Chairman.
Thank you. Councillor Butland.
If there is cross-party support for a decision of council, I will be very happy, as we have done on a number of occasions, to invite the group leaders of the other three parties to join with me in a cross-party thing. Clearly, if there isn't agreement, then you can't have a cross-party letter. But I'm hopeful that we will be able to reach that cross-party agreement. I'm very, very happy that there should be one message then that goes out to communities.
Thank you very much. I have next Councillor Rose. Councillor Rose, your question now, please.
Yeah. Thank you, Madam Chairman. Good evening.
Hello.
I have a question for Councillor Button. There's in two elements. Will we have to accept all the inspector's modifications, or can we just select some? And what happens if one or more of the authorities decide to withdraw the plan? Thank you, Madam Chairman.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Rose. The answer to both questions is basically it's all or nothing. As far as the modifications are concerned, we will have to accept all the modifications, which clearly the two major ones would be the withdrawal of the two garden communities, but there will be others, I've no doubt, some of which will be as a consequence of that decision. But until we receive that interim report, we can't commit to going down that line, but we will have to accept all. And as far as the view of the three authorities is concerned, it was the three that went together, and it will be all in, all out. So if one authority was to decide to withdraw from the plan, that would mean all authorities, all three authorities, would have to withdraw the plan, and all three would have to go back to square one. That's something which I personally hope we can avoid, and I am spending time talking to my opposite numbers in Colchester and Tendring to ensure that we can come up with a response which will enable us, all authorities, to move forward as quickly as possible to secure a sound local plan.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. My next questioner is going to be Councillor Wright. Councillor Bob Wright. Councillor Wright, are you there with your question?
Moved to my phone. With regard to the leader's full page, open letter to the residents in the local press, what was the cost to the taxpayers of Braintree District? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Thank you, Councillor Wright. I will get the actual price and make it public to all members of council.
Thank you very much. Now, Councillor Garrard. Councillor Garrard.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I note in paragraph 40 of the inspector's letter, he acknowledges the increasing proportion of older people in the North Essex population. Having taken a part in a study about loneliness and isolation, and having recently seen GP services reduced to a part-time level in the Bumpstead ward, with the majority now travelling into Suffolk to see a doctor, and given that most villages no longer have things like a village shop, I'm concerned about where older people will live and their quality of life in retirement, because during this pandemic, I've spoken to many older people on the phone and have found that during lockdown, their lives have barely changed because there are so few amenities nearby. What will the rejection of the intended purpose-built garden communities mean for older people now? Will they be placed on the outskirts of rural villages, for example?
Thank you. Councillor Butland.
Madam Chairman, again, may I ask if Councillor Spray could answer that question, please?
Yes, Councillor Spray.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, Councillor Butland. Councillor Garrett, that's a very interesting question. And I want to say, first of all, that I think most of us do realise it's particularly been brought home to us over the last few months how very difficult it can be for some of our older residents, particularly those living on their own, or even not on their own, with a partner, who have been in lockdown and have found themselves more isolated than some of us, I must say. So I do appreciate your question. I think it's fair to say that on smaller developments, and I can't say what's going to happen, I can't preempt what is going to come forward in the way of applications, particularly for Section 2, but on smaller developments, it is certainly harder to get a good mix of housing across the board. So bungalows, I'm thinking of in particular, which can be what a lot of older residents would look to move into. And we do try now, make a great effort, our planning team, when applications come in for housing sites, to encourage developers to include at least several bungalows. And sometimes we're successful in that, sometimes we're not. But obviously it is much easier with larger sites to plan for this. And certainly that is what would happen with the garden community sites. There was going to be a really good mix of housing across the board, everything from bungalows up to 4, 5, 6 bedroom homes. Yes, it's definitely harder to achieve on the smaller sites. And if we do get applications for small sites around villages, unfortunately, it may not be possible to achieve quite the mix we would like. And that means sometimes older residents living on the edge of villages will find it harder to access village amenities, shops, surgeries, and so on. So there is a good point to be made there. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I have Councillor Coleridge next. Councillor Coleridge, have you got your mic on?
Sorry about that. Thank you, Madam Chairman. My question is that could any landowner or developer submit a planning application for all or part of an area that has been proposed as a garden community?
Thank you.
Councillor Mrs. Spray?
Yes, thank you, Chairman. Thank you, Councillor Butland. Short answer to that, Councillor Coleridge, is yes. There is nothing to stop any landowner, developer, or an agent on their behalf putting forward a planning application, which would have to be through the normal planning process. So applications would be submitted to Braintree Planning Department, or obviously Colchester if it was on their side of the border, to be considered by officers and by the respective planning committees. And as you, I think, are probably aware, planning applications can be resisted if we don't feel they are suitable, but only if we have absolutely solid planning grounds to do so. And it is harder to resist that if we don't have a 5-year housing supply, which this council at the moment doesn't. We estimate ours to be about 4.5 years. But yes, short answer is anybody can submit a planning application for consideration. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Now I have Councillor Walsh.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chairman. I've got one question in 2 parts. I do have a slight prequel, a very brief one arising out of...
It'll better be brief. It'll better be brief.
Extremely brief.
Good.
As the statement from our leader was relatively lengthy and may have been prepared in advance, might it not have helped if we could have seen this in advance?
Councillor Butland, do you want Councillor Walsh, do you want him to answer that now?
I'll go ahead with my substantive question.
Yes, do the other one as well.
Yeah. This is in 2 parts. Firstly, does the leader not agree on reflection that his reference in the joint leaders statement of the 20th of May, and I quote, to additional housing and gypsy and traveller sites will now be required? Does he not agree on reflection this was potentially provocative, if not stereotypical, to a single community, as all district councils are anyway required to provide such housing?
Thank you. Councillor Butland, are you all right with those 2?
Yes.
Well,
let me check. Oh, sorry. Is there more?
There's just one other. Would you like me to answer it now, Councillor Butland?
Yeah, by
Go
all
ahead
means,
with it.
Councillor Walsh.
Thank you. The second question is, how does the leader explain how we've got here after 5 years' work on the local plan and garden communities? And what lessons does he himself learn from the inspectors, having twice been unable to find the plan sound and deliverable? And therefore, looking forward, would the leader not agree to work collaboratively with all parties and groups on a timely and constructive way forward to avoid any further delay due to withdrawing the local plan, which I submit is not in anyone's interest?
Right, thank you very much. Now, Councillor Butland, I think you have all the parts necessary.
Right, okay. Yes, I have prepared the statement. You would have expected me, having put it on the agenda, that I would prepare a statement and make a statement. I'm not sure that it's necessary for me to hand it out, but I certainly will ensure that all members have a copy of it tomorrow morning. As regards the comment about additional houses and gypsy and traveller accommodation, I was merely attempting to ensure that people recognise that this isn't the end and things go away. There will still be things as a district council that we will be required to do. Councillor Mrs Spray has already outlined why we have a figure of 500 to 1,000, and we will need to work on that clearly if we move on to section 2. And also with regard to gypsy and traveller accommodation, I would draw the attention of Councillor Walsh to page 75 and our policy, local planning policy 36, which talks about gypsy, traveller and travelling show persons accommodation, where we had in that the council will allocate up to 30 pitches. Maybe I should just explain that there are sites, there are pitches, there are caravans, there's a hierarchy. And a site will contain a number of pitches, and a pitch is equal to 2 caravans. So 30 pitches is 60 caravans. So the council will allocate up to 30 pitches for gypsy and traveller accommodation at strategic growth locations and the garden communities, or through the planning application process. Now, clearly, if the garden communities are not there, then those pitches will, of necessity, have to be concentrated on strategic growth locations. That was all I was saying. It's a fact and something which we all need to be aware of. And the final question about working collaboratively. Let me just say how I think we have already worked collaboratively on this. First of all, I established a committee of cabinet, a subcommittee of cabinet, known as the Local Plan Subcommittee. As a subcommittee of cabinet, it does not have to be Widdicombeized. It does not have to have any other members on it other than cabinet members. I took a decision, rightly or wrongly, that was wrong or would be wrong. And as a result, I invited 2 of our backbenchers onto that committee and also offered each of the 3 minority parties representation on that. You, Councillor Walsh, are one of those now. Councillor Everard represents the Labour group and Councillor Hume represents the Halstead residents. There was no need to do that, but we took that. So my first point would be not guilty. There is the evidence that we have been working collaboratively. Second point, unlike some authorities, we did not give to that local plan subcommittee the power to make decisions. They have the power to make recommendations, not to cabinet, which is a one-party state, I accept, but to full council. And that is where, of course, all members, all political colours, all political persuasions are able to take part in that debate. And all of the major decisions, in fact, all of the decisions relating to the local plan in Braintree have taken part in full council. So again, I plead not guilty and say that the evidence shows clearly that we have worked collaboratively. Now, there is a difference, I accept, Councillor Walsh, between working collaboratively and being able for everyone to agree. They are not the same thing. Thank you, Madam Chairman.
Thank you very much. No, I'm going to move on. We still have a lot more. So everybody's having a jolly good turn at this. And my next councillor is Councillor Wallace. Councillor Wallace, are you there with your question?
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Off you go.
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. Have you got your mute on?
I do, yeah. I can hear you now. Thank you.
Okay, good. Off you go.
Activity issues. Thank you. Can the leader give an assurance that the pledge in the Conservative main election leaflet for the Braintree district elections in 2019, which was distributed to all wards, remains as that we remain committed to the production of a local plan which will meet the housing needs of the district over the next 15 years, including the development of sustainable new communities? Thank you.
Councillor Butland.
Madam Chairman, thank you, Councillor Wallace. It enables me just to pick up, I don't want to get involved in personal issues with the former Secretary of Calls, but she did say in that not all Conservative councillors in wards carried that commitment. I can assure and make a public declaration that every election address that we as Conservatives stood on, only just over a year ago, let us remember, contained that commitment, as Councillor Wallace has absolutely quoted right. That remains our commitment because we do believe in trying to deliver on our election promises. We don't just write them to fill up a few pages on the back of a piece of paper. We remain committed to that, but clearly, if the situation changes, then we will have to reassess how we move forward. But we do remain committed to high quality, sustainable communities, and that is what we will want to deliver, and that's what we will do to keep our election pledge.
Thank you very much. Councillor Hensman comes next.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chairman. I'd just like to ask, does the leader agree with me that the key to the local plan process was ensuring the required employment land was allocated and that a high ambition was set for North Essex to attract inward investment and create new high-paid and high-skilled jobs for local residents? Could the leader please explain the implications for both on receiving the post-hearing letter from the planning inspector? I fear land for employment could be lost to speculative development for housing. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Butland, are you all right with that?
Thank you, Councillor Hensman. With your approval, Madam Chairman, could I ask Councillor Cunningham, as the portfolio holder for economic development, who's been very much involved in this, to answer that question?
Yes, I think so. Councillor Cunningham.
Madam Chairman, thank you very much, and thank you to Councillor Hensman for his question. And he's absolutely right that in the initial Section 1 of the local plan, some 7 hectares were going to be allocated in employment land to the garden communities, with the possible projection of some 34 hectares over the fullness of time, over several decades, with those developments and those communities came to fruition. Obviously, with the initial response from the inspector, that allocation isn't quite needed. We did have an over allocation in the emerging local plan. Therefore, it is likely that any additional allocation could perhaps be allocated to our current employment sites. I'm thinking the possibility of Horizon 120, Bluebridge in Halstead, and probably Eastways in Witham. That could be potential sites without wanting to prejudge anything at this stage. With regard to the economic development strategy, one of the reasons why we were so enthusiastic about pursuing the Garden Communities Initiative was that opportunity to master plan significant areas of local plan, working with other agencies, working with the private sector to lever in that inward investment, those higher paid, higher skilled jobs. What I would assure Councillor Hensman and other colleagues is that despite the findings or despite the contents of the initial letter from the planning inspector, that ambition still very much exists. We are still committed to working with local authorities on a North Essex economic strategy to ensure we attract those high-paid, high-skilled jobs, to improve and increase the local area's productivity. But we're also mindful at this moment in time that those long-term ambitions may well need to be balanced in the short and medium term as we look to support the economy coming out of the COVID-19 crisis. Thank you, Madam Chairman.
Thank you very much. My next questioner is going to be Councillor Jenny Sandham. Are you there with your microphone?
Chairman, sorry for interrupting your question, but we do have a point of information from Councillor Abbott, which we do need to give way to.
All right, I have to give way to Councillor Abbott. Councillor Abbott.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I'm sure none of us want to mislead in any way the public, but it is a fact that the vast majority of housing and employment land is not in the Section 1 garden communities, it's in the Section 2. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I don't know, Councillor Butland, do you want to come back on that, or would you prefer that I go to my next questioner?
Next question, Madam Chairman, if you accept, you are chairing.
It's power all the way. So I did ask Councillor Sandham. Are you there?
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chairman. In his open letter to residents, the leader states that the Garden Communities Plan would protect existing towns and villages from urban sprawl. Why did he not say in his letter that Section 2 of the local plan, which contains the vast majority of development needed to 2033, already includes several urban and village extensions, such as up to 1,000 houses at Fearing, and that the delays in the local plan caused by Section 1 being found unsound twice have led to many speculative developments, in addition to the Section 2 allocations being built around local villages?
Thank you. Thank you very much. Councillor Butland, are you going to reply to that?
Yes. In response to Councillor Sandham, thank you very much for that question. Our plan is, as I've said on numerous occasions, and I think most members recognise, whilst for the initial period was also looking a long period ahead, and the inspector accepted that we were talking through, possibly through to the end of the century. And in terms of the development, by going for garden communities, it would relieve, to a certain extent, urban sprawl. It won't be able to stop it completely, but our key thing was to try and ensure that our villages and towns did not morph into one conglomeration. And I think that's something that when we move forward, I'm sure that nearly every member of the council will want to ensure that that takes place. But of course, we will need to ensure that we have a plan, and as Councillor Spray mentioned, a 5-year land supply to be able, on planning grounds, to oppose those applications that may, not necessarily will, but may come forward to look to seek to expand areas around, particularly, I suppose, Braintree, and as we've heard from members opposite of the Halstead residents, Halstead itself, and some of our larger areas like Coggleshaw's and Fearing, as you have mentioned.
Thank you very much. Councillor Wilson, I have next. Councillor Wilson? Councillor Wilson, are you there?
Forgot to turn my microphone on. Actually...
No.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can now. Go on. Speak.
I was just going to... My question's already been asked, so
Has
I'll
it?
pass.
Okay. Thank you very much then, Councillor Eusden. Councillor Paul Eusden.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chairman. I have 2 questions. As my ward is one closest to west of Braintree, it's had the prospect of west of Braintree hanging over it for some time now, with rain also having to resist considerable speculative development. Can you give me an assurance that my ward will not be adversely impacted by Section 2 of the local plan? And the second part is, with garden communities in inverted commas off the page, how do we still get infrastructure-led development, and where will the funding for that major infrastructure come from?
Thank you. Councillor Butland.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. And clearly, as someone who represents that area at a county level, I'd love to be able to say that rain will not be impacted adversely as a result of Section 2. But no one, in all honesty, can give any such undertaking to any part of the district at this present time. And I know that rain has been under attack from, if I can put it bluntly, both ends, from the end towards Braintree, and there is soon to be a hearing with regard to the 200 application for 200 houses in School Lane, which Councillor Euston has been prominent in opposing, and I have joined him, and I also spoke strongly at a public meeting a couple of years ago against development along the Braintree Rain border corridor. But clearly, no one can say that anywhere will not be. I hope that it won't be, but every time you say that you hope place A won't be affected, you are, of course, saying, well, place B might be affected. And that is why, if we move on to Section 2, we will need to look at this. And there's one point I think I ought to make, which we are seeking legal advice on. When we did Section 2, we had about 350 sites across the district put forward. We've included in Section 2 about 80 of those sites. If we need, as a result of the inspector accepting our housing numbers as being correct, if we need to establish that more houses will be required in Section 2 if the Garden Communities Plan fails, then we will have to give consideration as to where they will be. The issue will be, do we only need to reconsider those sites that were put forward for development and we considered and refused? Or will we have to open up to everyone who might have a site? Now, at this moment, members, I do not know the answer to that. We are seeking legal advice, but clearly the latter of opening up to everyone potentially would open up a whole new can of worms. We will take legal advice and clearly we will act legally.
Thank you.
As regards the second question from Councillor Euston about infrastructure, the whole point of going for the garden communities was that it was an infrastructure-led plan. Clearly, if we have more very small or smaller developments, we all know that you do not get the amount of infrastructure that is needed. So if you add 200 houses on, you'll get some section money from developers, but it won't provide that extra primary school or that doctor's surgery or those new roads, because under the planning, it's not, you cannot impose upon developers the right to make good existing shortages. You can only make imposition on them in terms of developer contributions for stuff which is directly attributable to that development. And the sad fact is, the smaller the development, the less infrastructure one tends to get. And I know that there probably isn't a member here tonight who can't point to somewhere in their ward where that has been the case, not in the last 5 minutes, not in the last 5 years, but actually during the whole lifetime of the current planning system.
Thank you very much. I have Mary Cunningham, Councillor Cunningham next. Councillor Mary Cunningham.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I've got two quite brief questions, please. The first one, as a member along with Councillor McKee for the Braintree West Ward, many residents have been concerned for many years over the possibility of the unsuitable Brook Green development coming to fulfilment. In light of the post-hearing letter from the planning inspector, can the leader comment on the position developers may take in response to events regarding sites that this authority deemed suitable and unsuitable in the submitted local plan? And my second question, we keep reading that from cause supporters that the plan is unsound. Is it true that the plan has been found unsound? Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much. Councillor Butland.
If I can deal with the first bit about Brook Green, when I was the county member for Braintree Town, part of that came in through my division, and now the other end comes into my division. And I supported the opposition to that. I think it is wrong. Now, I want to divorce those comments from my next comments because I don't want to pick on any individual developer. But what developers may or may not do now with regard to either sites which they put in and were rejected as part of the local plan process, or new sites which they think they might wish to chance their arm, assuming that we have to go down that line. And as I say, we will take legal advice. I cannot tell, but I would be surprised if some developers and landowners would want to have a go, if I can put it that way. And on the second issue, which has just temporarily escaped my mind, Councillor Cunningham. Councillor Mrs. Cunningham?
Sorry.
Councillor Cunningham, can you repeat your
The
last
second
Yes.
part.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes. We keep hearing from CAUSE supporters that the plan is unsound. Is it true that the plan has been found unsound?
The plan hasn't actually been found anything at the moment because we haven't had the inspector's plan. To be fair, though, he is saying that he will find it unsound if we were to keep the 2 garden communities in. But what he is saying, it is possible to get a sound plan, and that sound plan would incorporate, as I set out in my statement, a whole raft of issues and work which he accepts the local authorities did correctly, and he accepts the viewpoint. And of course, he says that the garden community for east of Colchester, and I hope, I'm still, looking to see whether people who are opposed are in favour of that and accept the view of the inspector that offers an excellent opportunity for sustainable development, etc. It would include that, and he's saying then that the plan would be sound.
Thank you very much. Councillor Hicks, hopefully you're there with your microphone ready for us. Councillor Hicks?
I'm here, I'm ready. Hi there,
Hi.
Chairman. Thank you very much for letting me in. The question for Councillor Butland. Just one thing that really is stacking out in my mind is, why did you, the leader, not listen to us, we the Green Party, Green and Independent Party, as proposed last year, that no further money should be given to the NEGC unless and until the inspector said the garden communities could go ahead?
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Thank you, Councillor Hicks. I listen to a lot of what the Green Party says. I read your tweets, by the way, with great interest. I was very interested in some of the tweets that you have made during the pandemic, with some lovely photographs from Derby of some stuff which you said was in Silver End. And so I have to say that I listen to what the Green Party say. I have to make a decision whether there is an element of truth or whether it is something I should do. In the case of of some of your tweets, I tend to dismiss them, and it was a decision which we took.
Thank you very much. Right, I'm now going to move on to Councillor Barr. Councillor Barr? John Barr?
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Chairman. My question has been partially addressed.
Right, well, we won't go over it then. Can you do?
No. Due to technical problems, I was pushed rather down the queue. But there is a specific point I'd like to make. My question is, would Councillor Butland agree that the inspector's latest letter on part 1 of our local plan increases the risk of new housing in Braintree and Bocking being determined by developers rather than by local people? Does he think that previously rejected proposals which would link up nearby communities, Rain, High Garrett, etc., with Braintree, degrading environments, destroying local character, and overloading roads, could be revived in some form due to government rules on how planning applications are determined? Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, Councillor Ball. I've always felt that had the garden community approach been accepted, it would fundamentally have tilted the balance in favour of community-led developments as opposed to developer-led developments. And I still hold to that very strongly. That was the whole point of trying to move forward on garden communities, because it would have put, in my view, may not be everybody's view, but in my view, that it would have put local authorities very much in a stronger position in terms of master planning and the sort of communities that we wanted to develop. Unfortunately, if we have to go back to a predominantly developer-led, then I agree with the fears that Councillor Ball has, that that may well mean that the communities that are developed are not of the type that we would have wanted to have seen. However, that is not to say that there aren't some developers who may still be willing to work with us outside of, you know, if we get a local plan, Section 2 local plan, we will work tirelessly to try and get developers to work on developing now new communities. And I think there's a lot to have been learnt over the last 10 weeks about what communities may or may not want in the future. And I don't put all developers in the same basket, but there clearly are some who are only interested in the bottom line and not about developing sustainable communities.
Thank you very much. Councillor Schwer.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Yes, just to follow on a little from Councillor Powell's comments earlier. Many Halstead residents, I feel, are already very concerned about the amount of development in and around Halstead, especially on the north and the south sides. And this has basically, I believe, led to concerns about the social and transport infrastructure deficit in this community. But it's not only just affects their community, it affects the rural communities around as well, because these decisions actually affect the rural villages close to Halstead, and they can also have an effect. Like, as we know in Halstead, the education places are limited along with the health. And as and when Halstead, these houses are built, the sustainability from Halstead actually moves out into the rural villages. One of the questions I'd like to ask is, will Halstead residents be more or less likely to see improved infrastructure if approaches by developers carry on like this? Because I think that there is a structure. And my other question is also bearing in mind about the speculative applications that may well come forward. I believe there was a plan by a developer for 1,000 or 2,000 hounds near Gosfield Airfield during the consideration of the local plan. Could I ask, is it possible that a plan like this, or this plan, could well be resurrected again? Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. The first part of Councillor Swear's comments about Halstead, I entirely agree with. I think he has summarised very well the potential issues that will arise there. On the issue of Gosfield, I was always somewhat bemused that someone who was opposing the local plan was also at the same time acting on behalf of clients to propose, as Councillor Swear has said, a potential 2,000 house development in Gosfield. I do not know, Councillor Swear, whether that will happen again. And of course, we won't know until such time as either the inspector makes his report and we've decided which way we go, or, as we said about an hour and a quarter ago, developers just decide that they will now put planning applications in. And I have already seen on social media a local agent suggesting to clients that now would be the time. So we have to remain aware of the potential dangers. Yes.
Thank you. Does that answer both of Councillor Schwer's questions? Yes.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chairman.
Yes, thank you very much. Now I'm going to extend a courtesy. I'm not normally given to that, but I'm going to extend another courtesy to Councillor Abbott for another question.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. You are very kind. Does the leader recognise that a huge number of the contributions from his group tonight have been highly speculative and raising fears in local communities about potential further development in their areas, which I think is wholly unnecessary at this stage? And would he answer the point I made earlier and confirm, as we all know, that it is Section 2 of the local plan which contains approximately 14,000 houses, which has to be passed in order for any plan to be found sound, which has been sat on the shelf for years.
Thank you very much. Councillor Butland, will you come
Madam
back
Chairman,
with that?
I'm not going to be critical of colleagues on this side of the chamber who I think are expressing the genuine concerns of their local residents. I think that is the role of all people. And in expressing those concerns, that doesn't mean to say that they are in any way trying to scaremonger any more than Councillor Abbott opposing some of the cases and examples that he used to oppose the garden communities was scaremongering. He was representing the views of people that he felt, took a different view from the administration. And I fully support him in doing that. And I fully support members in wards who may well be now feeling affected coming forward. I hope what I have said tonight is that, we cannot say yes and we cannot say no. We need to go through the process. We will get that, start that process as soon as we get the interim report from the inspector, and then we will go through. And of course, if we approve that we will go out to consultation, that consultation will take place direct between respondents and the inspector. And as the inspector has said, and I think that is, would be worrying, I suspect, to people who oppose the plan, that he might need to open the hearing again. These are just statements. I think, I don't think it's scaremongering. I think it is being honest, though.
Well, thank you very much, everybody. I think all of you have asked the most fascinating and interesting questions on this. I'm delighted with everybody's kindness towards other members and towards me. And I'm now going to conclude this item. You've all been really, really patient. Thank you very much. And so have the officers. So I'm going to proceed with the next item of business now on your agenda, which is item 7. And that is to receive a statement from our returning officer, Andy Wright, which is an update on the parliamentary boundary review. So can I invite Andy, the returning officer, to make his statement?
Thank you, Chairman. I want to bring members up to date with where the government have got with the parliamentary boundary review. Just to go back over a little bit of history, there were proposals put forward some time ago for a reduction of MPs from 650 to 600 nationally. The Boundary Commission completed their review back in 2014 with the aim of implementation at the next scheduled election in 2020. Obviously, we've had 2 snap general elections in 2017 and 2019, so the recommendations at this point have not been considered. On the 19th of May 2020, a cross-party discussion was undertaken and the Cabinet Office Minister has laid before Parliament the Parliamentary Constituencies Bill for its first reading. In summary, the bill removes the requirement of government to reduce the number of UK constituencies from 650 to 600, and it requires the Boundary Commission to conduct a further review based on 650 MPs and report to Parliament before July 2023. Primarily, this is a Boundary Commission review requiring only administrative input from the Council in the form of electoral and planning development data. There will, however, be an opportunity for representation, and I will, when advised, inform members via group leaders accordingly. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much, Andy. This is a statement, but do any members wish to ask the returning officer any questions relating to this statement? If you do wish to ask a question on it, please indicate by the chat function, and I will take each member in turn as they appear. There's nothing coming up, and that question, no one has indicated they wish to speak, so I'm going to proceed with the next item of business, which is agenda item 8, a motion by Councillor James Abbott, sorry. The cycling motion. Members, this item is set out on page 5 of your agenda. Councillor Abbott, you're bringing forward this motion. Do you have a seconder?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chairman. Councillor Mrs. Sandham is going to second the original motion.
Thank you. And before I invite Councillor Abbott to introduce and formally state his motion, I can confirm that there has been one amendment which has been submitted, which has been circulated now to all members. Councillor Abbott, you are bringing this amendment forward. I've asked you if you have a seconder, and you do.
On the amendment, Madam Chairman, I believe Councillor Cunningham is seconding.
Yes, that's what I'm looking at. Yes,
That's
yes.
correct, Madam Chairman. Yes, I am.
Yes, thank you very much. So can I confirm that the proposer and the seconder of the original motion consents to the amendment?
Yes.
Yes?
Yes.
Thank you. So the amendment has been adopted and will now proceed to become the substantive motion without further debate. And that moves us on to the substantive motion debate. So now, Councillor Abbott, can you set out your motion as we've accepted it and it's amended? Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chairman. So the full new wording is that the Council notes the multiple benefits of cycling, which include achieving modal shift, which in turn reduces the number of car journeys, reduces CO2 emissions and improves local air quality. Improved health for those able and keen to take up opportunities to cycle, and improved social well-being. Council also notes that segregation of cycling from traffic is important to maximise these benefits by making cycling as safe and as attractive as possible. The Council therefore welcomes the Government's plan to boost greener active transport. In particular, it notes that the Government intends to fund and work with local authorities to help make it easier for people to use bikes, including e-bikes and e-scooters, when Government legislation allows to get around. Council agrees that the plan will be important in the recovery period from the COVID-19 pandemic, and so it will support creating new temporary and permanent cycling routes by working with Essex County Council and other partners to secure a share of available government funds with the aim of discouraging overcrowding on public transport and supporting more cycling and walking. Council also agrees that in developing the local plan, in working with partners such as Essex County Council on developing cycling strategies, and in working with developers and local communities, Braintree District Council will positively support the long-term development of a comprehensive cycling network that is, as far as possible, segregated from traffic and which serves residents both within towns and villages and between them, and which also links in with key public transport infrastructure such as railway stations. The Council also accepts that new communities with cycle networks as an essential part of their infrastructure offer a great opportunity to further boost green active transport. So in speaking to that motion, Madam Chairman, I won't add a huge amount more because I think it's self-explanatory, but I do hope that it can attract support from all groups and all sides of the Council. In actual fact, the original motion is the same as we submitted to the March full Council, which unfortunately had to be cancelled for reasons we all know. We would say that over the years, investment has been made into cycling, and we welcome that. But the reality is that it has not been enough, and cycling routes remain partly completed or not joined up to key points, and often tend to be focused on the urban areas. As we all know, half of our residents live in villages and rural areas, and the UK has very low levels of cycling compared to several leading European countries. Holland is often cited as such. There is, though, now a new policy urgency to making a step change in cycling provision. Investment in safe, segregated cycling will, without doubt, produce significant modal shift that will have direct health benefits, as well as reducing traffic on the roads, which will in turn reduce air pollution and CO2 emissions. But in addition, as society recovers from the dreadful COVID-19 pandemic, social distancing may be needed for some time to come. And it is now national policy to significantly boost cycling and walking as safer modes of travel. Essex County Council recently stated that as schools start to take more pupils back, and I quote, "The government is advising that where possible, pupils are encouraged to walk or cycle to school, as the use of public transport at this time is not advised." And as we all know, the same applies to journeys to work. So in concluding, Madam Chairman, I believe we need to do two main things. Firstly, to take advantage of available funding to deliver immediate improvements to cycling, which will likely involve measures such as changes to road lanes using barriers, changes to road lining, or improved cycle parking and crossings. But secondly, and I think this is really crucial, we need to look at our cycling plans and of course the local plan to start planning for projects for new segregated cycling routes, so that in time, and we appreciate it will take some years to deliver this, residents using bikes in urban and rural areas alike can get about the district much more safely, separated from road traffic. I do hope all members can support the motion as amended. Thank you, Madam Chairman.
Thank you very much, Councillor Abbott. I just want to do something, backtrack a bit. Councillor Cunningham and Councillor Sandham, as seconders, do you wish to reserve your rights to speak? We didn't ask you.
Madam Chairman, obviously, Councillor Mrs. Sandham wishes to speak first. Obviously, give way to her as the seconder of the initial motion. If not, I'll just say a few comments at this point, if possible, please.
Yes, go on.
No, just really, I'm very keen to give way to other members who wish to speak on this, but I'm very pleased we've managed to find a cross-party agreement on this. I think this is something we were looking forward to discussing in March. The issues behind the motion were extremely pertinent then. Obviously, recent events of recent months have made sure they're even more pertinent. So I'm delighted to support a cross-party approach to this and look forward to hearing the comments from colleagues. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Sandham, do you wish to reserve your right to speak?
Yes, I'll reserve my right to speak. Thank you.
Thank you very much then, everybody. We cleared that up. So I'd now like to open up the debate on this substantive motion. Can I remind members they may only speak once on the substantive motion, and speeches should be confined to the matter of the motion and shouldn't last very long tonight. But I'll exercise my discretion to allow anything longer if the point's particularly complex or detailed. Do any members wish to speak on the substantive motion? If so, please indicate on the chat function. Councillor Pell.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I'm just pleased to say that my group have worked with the other groups to come to this conclusion, which I hope is a conclusion. I have just one comment to make, and that is the fact that it is good for people to cycle, but I would like us to act as an influencer, that the people that you see these days on their cycles in their black outfits, they need reflective clothes, because most of our roads and lanes have hedges overhanging, and sometimes it could be quite dark, and I wouldn't like to see somebody knocked off their bike from not having a reflective jacket. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Walsh. Councillor Walsh.
Thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
I'd like to speak very briefly in support of this motion. As we come out of lockdown towards a new normal finally, I think this is a great way to reduce pressure on public transport and indeed to reduce congestion on the roads. So I do hope that our council will seize this once in a generation opportunity and let's act as other leading councils are doing. And finally, it was reported on Radio 4 today that 40% of all journeys are less than 2 miles. So this is a feasible action we can take.
Thank you very much. Councillor Eusden, I have next.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Yes, I like to support this motion too, but I would ask, has any thought been given to how we keep pedestrians separated from cyclists and e-scooter users, particularly in our town centres and shopping areas? Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Hensman.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chairman. Mine is concerning the existing cycle lanes that we've got, where some traffic is segregated, especially along Millennium Way in Braintree. And what happens is the lanes tend to end on the wrong side of a road, busy road, and there's no easy way to cross over. And equally, I echo the points to protect pedestrians, whereby some inappropriate cyclists are using the footpath and some very young cyclists are on the road. And I'm wondering if it is actually a partnership that we require with our county council colleagues. Thank you, Madam.
Thank you very much. Councillor Wallace.
Thank you, Madam Chairman.
Mm-hmm.
I greatly support this motion on improving and promoting cycling within our district. Over the past 10 weeks of being in lockdown, it's absolutely fantastic to see and hear a vast growth in the number of our residents who have taken to the roads and cycle paths to keep themselves healthy, physically active and mentally healthy as well. Some members already know that I am a group exercise instructor within the district, and I greatly applaud the uptake of cycling, and I do hope it continues once life has returned to some form of normality. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Schweer is next.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Yes, I'd like to support this motion as well, because I think it's very important. And I think the very important point here, as Councillor Abbott said, is that actually it's not limited to towns or cities, but actually, hopefully, will integrate very well into rural communities as well, because transport is all about communication and communication on wheels. And it's vital going forward with this motion that we also include the technological change, which will potentially make the use of wheels and connecting communities a lot easier, because with the advantage of electric e-bikes and scooters, which will no doubt be separated from pedestrians in cities and towns, that the mobility will increase. And again, it's the use of wheels. And these wheels will be absolutely flexible. And it is a very good policy. But I do hope that going forward, that not only this district, but the county will look at this with the cycling and the walking as an overall integrated cosmopolitan, a cosmopolitan strategy going forward, because it's really important and will have long-term effects and benefits to communities as well. And for all of those reasons, I'm in agreement with this proposal. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Now I have Councillor Parker.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I too am very happy to support this motion. And like I'm sure many members, I have noticed that a really big increase in the number of cyclists on the road during this lockdown. I suspect part of the reasons of that is that cyclists feel that it's much safer because there's much less traffic on the roads. I applaud the desire to segregate cyclists from vehicles, but it may not be practical on some of the rural areas. So I would like us to consider, as part of the strategy, the designation of some roads as safe cycle routes, so that everybody knows that when you're driving down this road, you are likely to come across cyclists. That's all I have to say. Thank you very much, Madam Chairman.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Councillor Wright.
Thank you, Chairman. It's good that the government has read the March agenda and saw our motion on cycling and has fully supported it with funds. I fully support this motion.
Thank you very much. Councillor Beavis, I have.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I support the motion, and I really do support the cross-party approach to this as well. Could the council possibly consider using the public health brand Live Well to help both boost and promote cycling in the Braintree district, possibly something like Live Well Cycle? Thank you, Madam Chairman.
Thank you. And Councillor Van Dolken? Councillor Van Dolken?
My apologies. Thank you, Madam Chairman. I too wish to support this this motion, and it strikes me, and I'm surprised I'm the first person to mention this, that this is the ideal. This is why garden communities are ideal. New communities where the infrastructure, separate infrastructure, can be put in place. In the same way, when the Netherlands is always mentioned as the one place where cycling is almost a religion, it needs to be taken into account that half the country, half the cities were destroyed during the war. Everything was rebuilt, and this gave them the opportunity to do this. So I really think that this is a great support for the garden community or the new community idea. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Councillor Bebb?
Yes, as a relatively recent convert to e-bikes, I thoroughly
commend this motion. I'm delighted that e-book bikes are included. I'm perhaps a little bit more sceptical about e-scooters because having been in Europe this last year, and I found it a little bit dangerous sometimes with these e-scooters zipping down the pavement. So I think they would need to be segregated. But I will enthusiastically endorse this motion. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Rose.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. Yes, I would endorse this cycling motion. The only comment I would make, Chairman, is that I see it more in residential areas, but there are cyclists who don't have any illumination on their bicycles. And I just wondered if this may add to difficulties with other road users may not see them.
Thank you very much. Nobody else has come forward. Thank you, members.
Apologies, Chairman. We have Mrs. Sue Wilson who'd like to speak. Thank you.
Who would like to speak?
Councillor Mrs. Sue Wilson.
Councillor Mrs. Wilson, your name's not up, but do speak.
I know I'm having problems with my chat thing.
Okay.
I wanted to say, yes, I think this is a brilliant motion and everything else, but can someone confirm for me? I thought that cycles were not allowed. It was illegal for cycles to ride on the pathway when, you know, just endangering people walking along the road. And I don't know, I'd like confirmation of whether that's true or not.
Right. Well, I'm going to ask Councillor Abbott as the proposer of the substantive motion to close the debate, and I'm sure he can deal with your point there and then, can't you, Councillor Abbott?
Apologies, Chairman, for interrupting, but you do have Councillor Sandham and Councillor Unsworth who wishes to speak on this item.
Oh, two more people have just come in onto my scroll. So Councillor Sandham would like to be the first, and followed by Councillor Unsworth. You have to do it a bit quicker or my eyes don't manage to catch you.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chairman. I just wanted to say it's really good to see high level support here, and I think it very much reflects the support in the community. So many people have been saying the same things, that it's just so nice for people to feel safe on the roads during lockdown, and it now seems like the perfect moment to make that a longer term thing. So yeah, so thank you for the support.
Thank you. Thank you. So Councillor Unsworth.
Yes, finally get to speak. I'd like to support this as well. I'd like to see echo some of Councillor Swear's comments, particularly on seeing segregated cycleways in the rural areas where some of the roads are quite bendy and twisty. And if we can possibly make the effort to get segregated cycleways, I know they're difficult and there's a lot of stakeholders, but I think they're really worth it. And if we can use segregated cycleways to join communities to communication hubs and other villages, I think that will be very, very worthwhile. Thank you.
Oh, well, thank you very much. So back to you, Councillor Abbott, and can you deal with that question as well from Councillor Wilson?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chairman,
Thank
and
you.
to all members for their very positive comments. Yes, in response to Councillor Mrs. Wilson, so the idea isn't to designate new cycleways on existing pedestrian footways. It's to create new space, and that could include completely new routes. So, for example, we're currently talking to Highways England about when they rebuild the A12, which they're going to do anyway, could they provide a cycleway all the way alongside it? So that's the sort of thing we're talking about. Apologies to members if I don't pick up on everyone's names, but I'll just cover a few points. The point about garden communities, yes, if we have any garden communities or any substantial communities, then we would expect to see cycling built in from the start. I don't think that's necessarily an argument in favour of the local plan, though. And I come back to the point I made on the previous item, that the vast majority of development that's going to take place in the district in the next decade or so, and indeed the vast majority of people who already live here in communities here are already here. So we need to be thinking about how we create better cycling provision for Whittam and Halstead and Braintree and all the places we've already got, and the villages in between. I think the point that councillors Euston and Hensman made about separation, pedestrians, poor crossings, I totally agree. Members may recall I've stood up many times and railed against the frankly bonkers cycle lane at Marks Farm roundabout. It's still there. Quite remarkable. I'm quite a keen cyclist, but you'd have to pay me a lot of money to attempt to use that particular cycle lane. I mean, that really is an example of just, you know, prehistoric thinking on cycling. We need to be moving forward and completely thinking in a different way. So I think that's covered most of the points people made, but just one final comment, Madam Chairman. It was very remiss of me not to say it at the start. Yes, very much support the fact that this is a motion which has got here with all party support, discussion around amendments, group leaders getting together. It's not the first time we've done it in the last year or so. We've had several motions where we've managed to do this. And I do hope we can. I know we're not always going to be able to do that, but I do hope we can do that going forward, because I think it's very constructive if we can get you know, the majority of the council on board on an all-party basis, because that gives a lot of momentum behind the decisions we make and the policies we set. Thank you, Madam Chairman.
Thank you very much, Councillor Abbott. So I'm going to proceed to the vote, and so I'll put this substantive motion to the vote. Members, we will be using a poll for the vote. A screen will appear which each member can see, but it's not available to the public via the YouTube channel. I'll be assisted by the meeting's facilitator to confirm the vote result before I formally announce the decision on the substantive motion. So members, when it appears on your screen, please vote. Well, I can confirm that the results of the vote are 46 for the substantive motion. And that, if anything else could be, is certainly unanimous. The substantive motion is approved. So thank you very much, members. And I'm now going to proceed to item 9, which is COVID-19, the impact on the council finances. This item is set out on pages 6 to 16 of your agenda. I'd like to invite Councillor Bebb, the Cabinet Member for Finance and Performance, to introduce this report. Members are reminded that this report is for noting only. Therefore, I will be seeking your agreement, and your silence will be the assent. Councillor Bebb, would you like to present the report?
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Yes, I presented the full report last week at Cabinet, and I'm going to provide a summary of that this evening. Now, the report provides an up-to-the-minute update on the financial support provided to businesses and council taxpayers being funded by the government, an initial assessment of the impact of the pandemic on the council's bottom line. Now, the communication corridor between BDC and MHCLG has been particularly congested with a launch of short notice of several support schemes. And I want to put on record my sincere appreciation of the can-do, super responsiveness, flexibility, and impressive assiduity of officers in implementing these schemes. So well done all. So the 3 parts. First of all, businesses. The government announced on the budget on March the 11th a number of measures to assist businesses suffering financial hardship as a result of the impact of the COVID-19 pandemic. Now, first of all, business rate discount, or also called reliefs. The retail, hospitality and leisure discount scheme previously announced was increased from 50% to 100%, and the maximum rateable value of £51,000 was removed for 2021. So, this expanded retail relief means that 833 businesses will pay no business rates in 2021. The cost of this is £17.87 million, and the government will reimburse the council for this. The other part is business support grants to small businesses and businesses in the retail, hospitality and leisure sector. Now, 2 grant schemes were introduced for this year: the Small Business Grant Fund and the Retail, Hospitality and Leisure Grant Fund. As of last week, 2,333 businesses had been paid a total of £27.23 million and this represents payments to 95% of the businesses considered to be eligible. We've just recently been informed that the government also want to introduce a new discretionary grant fund, and we've just received an allocation of £1.573 million, and we're currently determining the criteria to be used to pay businesses which were not eligible for the existing grant schemes. Moving now on to council taxpayers, the government announced in the budget that local authorities would receive an allocation from the £500 million hardship fund to deliver relief to council payers in the area. Now, we received just short of £900,000 on April the 3rd. The government's strong expectation is for billing authorities to provide all recipients of working age in the local council tax support scheme to receive a further reduction on their annual, a further reduction in their annual council tax bill of £150. I can confirm that approximately 4,500 households receive a reduction of £150 in their council taxability for this year. So, finally, the potential impact of COVID-19 on the council tax finances. The government requested an indication of the financial implications of the pandemic on local authorities in the initial period of March and April and a projection for the year. We did a return which indicated we would have additional expenditure of about £250,000, mostly on IT equipment, and a reduction of income of approximately 300 million. So the total impact of that is £3.3 million. Page 20 shows a schedule of the identified extra costs and reduced income. Now we've had some money given to us, the emergency payment fund from the government, a total in 2 tranches, which has come to £1.566 million, which is still a long way off what we've actually will be short of. We had to do a second return on the 15th of May, and that's with the first return. The main issue is that of reduced income with a shortfall of £2.139 million anticipated for the first 4 months of the year, and an additional budgeted expenditure of £346,000 expected to be incurred also in the first 4 months of the year. So this gives a total shortfall of nearly £2.5 million for that time, for which we've currently received emergency funding payment from the government of £1.566 million. Well, finally, a more detailed review of the council finances will be undertaken in August, which will be based on actual expenditure and income at the end of the first quarter of the financial year. I'll stop at that point, Madam Chairman. I'll be pleased to answer any questions.
Well, thank you very much, Councillor Bebb. Now, everybody should be clear again, this is for noting only. And so I therefore ask if anyone does want to speak on this item. Councillor Abbott does. If you wish to speak, please indicate by the chat function, and I'll, as usual, take each member as they appear. Councillor Abbott, would you like to start off then?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chairman. As leader of the main opposition group, can I firstly totally agree with Councillor Bebb about the very hard work of staff in their approach to the COVID-19 crisis and supporting communities, and indeed the work within communities themselves of residents and groups, and also thank the leader for the cross-party dialogue through this very difficult period. Specific to the financial position, does the Cabinet member think that the August review that he mentions in his report would be able to identify the likely 6-month and then 1 year net impact on council finances, which appears to be mainly loss of income?
Well, we hope so, but we're obviously having to have a bit of crystal ball gazing in some respects. We are a bit worried in that for the last return, the MCLGH, the Ministry of Communities and Housing and Local Government, asked us to give an indication of our reserves that we could use, well, could be possibly used, and that we find a little bit ominous. So we wait with trepidation on what's going to happen in the next few months.
Thank you. Anybody else? Councillor Walsh, I see.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Just very briefly, and thank you, Councillor Bebb, for your report. On page 6, you mentioned the total impact is a reduction of 3.3 million, and later down, 3 paragraphs later, you mentioned that support to date from central government gives us an extra 1.566 million. Are we hoping to get more from central government in this financial year? Or if not, what might the implications be, as we only seem to have covered so far half of the impact?
Indeed, they're kind of drip feeding. The initial allocation was about £61,000 only, and then we had a much more substantive tranche fairly recently. So we are anticipating further funding will be coming in as a result of our recent submission to them.
Thank you. I have Councillor Coleridge. Councillor Coleridge.
Yeah, sorry, thank you. Thank you, Madam Chairman. Councillor Bebb, do we know of the potential losses from the closure of all the council sports centres within the district since the lockdown has begun? And do we anticipate any assistance from the government in that respect?
Thank you.
We are in a little bit of a dilemma here because Fusion have obviously had to close the business temporarily. We are providing them with some support in the meantime, and we have got an organisation working with us to see if there is a financial way forward for Fusion. It is somewhat unfortunate. I did see in the Sunday press some conjecture that swimming pools, public swimming pools, might possibly open in July, and that might just give the encouragement that Fusion are certainly wanting just now to be able to carry on with their business, because they are obviously in quite dire straits.
Right. Anybody else? Thank you very much, Councillor Bebb. Well, thank you, members. I have no other names coming up, and I'll remind you again, the report is for noting only, and so I'm going to take silence as agreement. And my question is, do I take it that the report has been noted? And I'm going to wait. So that is silence. Thank you, Councillor Bebb and members. We now proceed to item 10, which is discretionary business rate discount relief and council tax schemes. This item is set out on pages 17 to 29 of your agenda, and I'd like to invite Councillor Bebb, Cabinet Member for Finance and Performance, to introduce this report and to move the recommendation set out on page 18 of the agenda. Councillor Bebb.
Thank you very much, Madam Chairman. This is really somewhat of a regularisation of what has been happening. The government made a series of announcements commencing with the budget on the 11th of March, introducing a range of measures to support businesses and economically vulnerable people and households, and which the local authorities were expected to use their discretionary powers to bring into effect. The government also confirmed that it would fully reimburse all local authorities of the costs involved. So we've had to respond to what the government has asked us to do. The measures which have been introduced under the local authorities' discretionary powers are 3 discount schemes and a set of business grants. And first of all, the discount schemes, the expanded retail discount scheme, pubs discount, and nurseries discount scheme. And in the business grant scheme, 1 small business grants fund, retail and hospitality, and as I've just described, and also support to local taxpayers, as I've just described. So the discretionary relief power to grant business rates discount is provided under Section 47 of the Local Government Finance Act 1988, as amended, and the relevant discretionary power to reduce the council tax liability on individuals under Section 13A of the Local Government Finance Act. So given the urgency for the council to provide these measures to businesses and council taxpayers at the earliest opportunity, it was agreed by the Cabinet Member of Finance and Performance and myself, in conjunction with the Corporate Director Finance, that the council would exercise its discretionary power as appropriate on the 20th of March. This report then sets out the recommendation to council to endorse the decision to introduce the measures announced by the government in response to the COVID-19 pandemic for the benefit of businesses and residents in the district. This paper also takes account of one other smaller item, the council tax care leaver exemption policy. Now, the council budget and tax meeting in February was already looking to look at the was looking at the possibility of introducing a care leaver exemption as a grant. In February, we referred that Essex-wide council tax exemption policy for care leavers was being developed, and that the finalised policy would be brought to council for approval at the earliest opportunity. The policy only applies to specific persons leaving the care of Essex County Council until they reach the age of 21. The principle behind the policy is that a care leaver living alone or solely with other care leavers will pay no council tax in much the same way as exemption is applied to students. The county councils agreed to reimburse billing authorities for the cost of reducing council tax liabilities in respect to its own care leavers up to the age of 21 and in proportion to its share of the precept. This would leave this council with approximately 28% of the cost and something like £5,000. The relevant discretionary power to introduce this policy is under Section 13A of the Local Government Act 1992. So members are asked, first of all, to endorse the use of the council's discretionary powers to introduce the following schemes: the discount schemes and the business grant schemes, and also the support of council taxpayers. And also, as in detailed in the report, in accordance with the relevant guidance, the cost of each of this will be reimbursed by the government, and also to agree to introduce a council tax exemption policy for care leavers leaving the care of Essex County Council until they reach the age of 21, as described in Appendix A of the main report, with effect from April the 1st, 2020. I so move, Madam Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Bebb. Councillor Bebb has moved the recommendations set out on page 18 of the agenda. So now can I please have a seconder on the chat function? I want a seconder. Who will second? Please send me a note saying you're going to second. I don't have a seconder at this point. Someone. Councillor Van Dolken, thank you very much indeed. Do you wish to reserve your right to speak? Thank you. Thank you. So now, do any members wish to speak on this item? If you do wish to speak, please indicate on the chat function, and I'll take each member in turn as they appear. Here we go. No member wishes to speak, or are you being a bit slow on your buttons? I'm going to take it very shortly that no one wishes to speak. No, I'm taking it that no one wishes to speak. There's no indication that anyone wishes to speak on this item, and I'm going to proceed to the vote. The recommendation set out on page 18 of the agenda has been moved and seconded, and we'll be using a poll for the vote. So here again, the screen will appear, which each member can see, but it's not available to the public via the YouTube channel. Members, I will be assisted by the meeting's facilitator to confirm the vote result. Before I formally announce the decision on this recommendation, members, when it appears on your screen, please vote. I have 45 members have voted for. There are no against and no abstentions that have come up on my screen. So therefore, it's unanimous and the recommendations have been approved. Thank you, Councillor Bebb and members. And so we're now going to proceed to item 11. Decisions made by the Chief Executive under urgency provisions.
Thank you, Chairman. Members, the report before you is for noting. As you'll be aware, during the recent pandemic, we had to cancel council meetings for a extended period of time. It was important that council business continued, and therefore I had to enact my urgency decision powers on 7 occasions. These decisions fell into 2 categories. The first ones being items that were due to go to full council on the 23rd of March. And we did actually publish those papers, but obviously the meeting was cancelled, and there were 3 of those. And 4 were issues related to the impact of COVID-19. In taking all of these decisions, I ensured the required consultation was undertaken before I made the decisions. And as when I'd made the decisions, they were published on the website with immediate effect and have been there for some time. As part of our constitutional requirements, I have to report them back to Cabinet and full council at the first opportunity. So I reported them to Cabinet recently and obviously to yourselves this evening. So the report before you summarises the decisions made and is there before you for noting, and I'm happy to take any questions.
So thank you very much. Members are reminded again that this report is for noting only, and there I'll be seeking your agreement, and silence will be the assent. So thank you, Andy. Do any members wish to say something on this item? If you wish to speak, please indicate by the chat function. I don't have a voting screen. It's for noting only, sorry. So, thank you, Andy, and members. I'm taking silence as agreement. Do I take it that the report has been noted? And I am going to take that as assent. Thank you, Andy and members. We're now going to proceed to item 12. Someone's got the microphone on. Someone needs to mute. That's better, I think. Yes, thank you. A report's for noting only, and we've agreed. So now I'm going to pause because I need to know from my officers whether we are going to take a comfort break now of 10 minutes. We've been at it a long while and we've still got a long while to go. Would we like to take a comfort break?
Chairman,
I wonder if we could, do you think we could ask the members whether they'd like a comfort break?
Please, Chairman.
Yes, yes. Okay, members. I can take it as a silent assent, I think. Do you wish to take a comfort break? I want a silent assent.
Chairman, you have a lot of indications through the video screens that members would like to pause for a comfort break.
Right, so we are going to pause for a comfort break then. Yes, I can see eyes being rubbed. All right, and I think we suggested 10 minutes, did we? Are you still happy with 10 minutes? Yes, so we're going to take a 10-minute break and we'll be back here at 22.
Okay.
Thank you very much, everybody. Thank you.
Right, members, before we actually leave, could the webcasting officer please confirm that the YouTube channel broadcaster has been paused? recommenced, please?
Yes, I can confirm that, Emma.
Thank you. I can confirm, Chairman, that all members have returned, including Councillor Van Dolken, who did lose his connection for a very short period of time. So, Chairman, all members are present for the recommencement of this meeting, full council. Thank you, Chairman. Chairman.
Thank you very much. In the light of the business yet to be concluded and the hour allocation to item 12 on the agenda, it is unlikely that the meeting will conclude within our allotted 3-hour time limit. Councillor Butland.
Madam Chairman, I move suspension of standing orders so that we can complete the meeting through to conclusion, should it be necessary.
Thank you. Have a seconder, please.
Second that.
Who's that?
Councillor Abbott.
Thank you, Councillor Abbott. And now I'm going to take silence as agreement. Do I have agreement from everyone that we suspend the council's standing orders that require the meeting to be concluded within 3 hours of it commencing, and that the meeting will continue until such time as all business is concluded? I'm waiting for silence for assent. Thank you then, members. That is agreed. We'll continue with the business as set out on the agenda. So we're on item 12, which is Councillor Graham Buckland, Leader's Report to the Council. Now, members, during this item, you can put questions to the leaders relating to a portfolio. We don't normally do it quite like this, but the powers and duties of the council or the district. Where a verbal response cannot be given in response to questions, a written response will be issued by the relevant cabinet member. So we're allowing a period of 1 hour for this item, but I may use my discretion to shorten or extend this period. But I'd be grateful for members' cooperation to be, like you have been so far this evening, for which I will thank all of you, as concise as you possibly can be during the item. So I'm now going to invite Councillor Buckland as leader of the council to introduce his report. Councillor Buckland, do you have anything that you wish to add to your report as set out already on pages 36 to 45 of the agenda?
Madam Chairman, just to say, this will not be the normal way of doing it. We will revert back to full reports from portfolio holders as soon as we get back into normal way. I did in the weekly meetings with the group leaders suggest that this might help take it through. Clearly, I don't want to add anything here because hopefully members are aware from the way in which both the Chief Exec and I have attempted to keep members informed throughout the period of things that have been going on, and copying of letters that we have received from ministers and that sort of thing. But I do want to emphasise two things. One, that the huge thank you at the end of my report to our staff at all levels, I think is something that I would want to put on record, and I'm sure I speak for all members. And that staff both out in the front line in terms of our refuse collection and our operations staff, but also to our finance staff who've ensured that money got out to businesses in a way which was speedy, but at the same time done exercising due diligence. And I'm delighted that the Chief Executive got a phone call from a business minister not to wrap us over the knuckles as many authorities got, but actually to say well done for the way in which we had got that money out. And also to all staff who have adapted to a new way of working from home, etc. And I hope members have found that by and large they have got the service that they were looking for, even though we've been in difficult circumstances. I'd also like to say that I think that this has demonstrated how local government at all levels has stood up and faced the challenges and done extremely well, working with our colleagues at the County Council, but also locally with colleagues at town and parish councils. A lot of huge amount of work has been done at that level in getting volunteers together and looking after local people who had difficulties. So I have nothing else to add but to put on record my thanks to our staff and also my thanks to all tiers of local government for the way in which we have responded to the pandemic crisis.
And the
Clearly, if there
chairman,
are any questions, we'll try and answer them.
the chairman would very much like to join you in that as well. Our staff have been absolutely wonderful on every single level. So now, thank you very much. Do members have any questions for Councillor Butland or any other member of the Cabinet? I have already 4 speakers and coming up to number 5, and the first one is, sorry, I wrote the wrong, is Councillor Abbott. Councillor Abbott?
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Yes, I've got 2 questions. If I could ask them separately, please. The first one to the leader, the second to Councillor Mrs. Spray. So to the leader, in responding to his report, can I again say how very much we support the work the Council's been doing in response to the unprecedented pandemic situation, and join the leader in thanking staff for their work throughout in dealing with the great challenges that have arisen. And also to note and welcome the cross-party working through the regular weekly group leaders meetings, which, if nothing else, taught me how to use video platforms. So thank you to the leader for instigating those. But on a more serious point, also thank you to the administration for listening on the green waste collections. It's really good to see those having been reinstated. Moving on to more of a question, the leader's confirmed in his report that the climate change group is going to resume its work. Would it be useful if I help with the information flow to that group, as I am now a member of the Essex County Council Climate Change Commission, which is obviously a separate body but doing similar work?
Councillor Butland?
Thank you. The invoice for the training is in the post. And I think that offer of Councillor Abbott would be very good. Could I suggest, Madam Chairman, that Councillor Abbott liaises direct with Councillor Mrs. Schmidt on that?
Yes, I'm sure he will.
As the chair. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Abbott. Are you finished then?
I've got my other question, if I may, Madam Chairman. So I've given Councillor Mrs. Spray notice of this because it's quite an involved question. Can the Cabinet member please say whether the BDC administration will consider adopting the following 5 points to move the local plan forward with broader cross-party and community support? Number 1, secure necessary modifications to Section 1 to remove garden communities at west of Braintree and at West Tay, but not accept any new garden community sites at this stage. 2, work cross-party group to secure adoption of Section 2 as quickly as possible to limit further speculative development, but also if she can say whether there's scope within Section 2's consideration to strengthen the policies on sustainability. 3, ensure that the Section 2 work includes meaningful engagement with local communities, especially on any further sites which may be necessary to make the plan sound. 4, repeating a request we made last year, and I know Councillor Butland referred to this earlier, but we make the request again, to reform the BDC internal local plan process to widen the membership of the local plan committee to a broader range of backbench councillors and geographical representation, whilst maintaining the administration majority. And 5, to confirm that BDC will not give any more money to any GC. Thank you, Madam Chairman.
Thank you. Councillor Butland, did you get all those down?
I think Councillor Abbott, I'm happy to answer, but if Councillor Mrs. Spray is happy to take an answer, unfortunately I can't see her on my screen at the moment. I'm very happy for her to take it. Are you okay, Councillor Spray?
Yes.
Yes. Yes. Thank you, Chairman. Yes. Thank you, Councillor Butland. Yeah, happy to take these.
You've done something to your microphone.
Oh,
Unmute
sorry.
yourself. That's better.
Sorry, I double clicked. Yes, thank you. And Councillor Abbott, I appreciate you giving me advance warning of these, because it's given me time to get my thoughts together. I think actually the majority of these questions have been referred to and largely answered during our earlier debate, but I will go over them again. Question 1 about securing necessary modifications to Section 1. Well, we await the inspector's next letter, which will contain all the modifications that he requires us and our partner councils to make in order to make Section 1 sound. Once that letter is received, there'll be a meeting of full council to debate the letter and vote on it as to how we wish to proceed. I don't want to preempt council's decision on that at all. So that is the process. We await the letter and the detail from the inspector. Question 2, cross-party group to secure adoption of section 2. Yes, I think we would all agree we need to get section 2 adopted as soon as possible, but we cannot proceed to section 2 until we've dealt with section 1. Now, there may or may not be a call for new sites. We are taking advice on that. The other option is to review the 250 sites which were not previously taken forward. I think we had about 350 sites come forward in the first call, of which 85 went into section 2, which leaves 250 not taken forward, which we could choose to review to see whether they are still suitable or available. But either way, the local plan subcommittee will look at the sites and make recommendations to full council, and at that meeting there will then be an opportunity for everyone to debate and to vote accordingly. Question 3, meaningful engagement with local communities. Yes, and there will be a public consultation on any either new sites or any previous sites that we choose to revisit. So absolutely, there will be public consultation on that. The local plan subcommittee, this is, sorry to state the obvious, a subcommittee, and it's a subcommittee of cabinet. So actually the membership is at the leader's discretion. The current membership, actually, Councillor Abbott, is a pretty good representation of backbench councillors. There are 5 on there out of a total of the membership of 10, including myself as the chairman. There are 5 backbenchers, and they represent all parties on the council. So the smaller minority parties are well represented. And actually, having looked at the membership today to remind myself of the wards involved, all members come from across the district, towns and villages. And the local plan subcommittee makes recommendations to the council. We don't make final decisions, but we make recommendations which are then debated and voted on. And finally, confirm that BDC will not give any more money to NEGC. As the leader has already stated earlier in this meeting, NEGC's position is being reviewed by this council and by our partner authorities, and a decision will be made in due course. Thank you. Thank you, Chairman. That's my answer.
Thank you. Now, Councillor Thorogood has just asked if he can ask Councillor Spray a question, and I'm going to allow it. Councillor Thorogood?
Yes, thank you very much, Madam Chairman. Can I to ask, also please consider better engagement with local communities, including parish councils, on reserve matters applications?
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, Councillor Thorogood. Interesting question, not one I've had before, I think. Well, actually, the process on consulting on reserve matters applications is the same as it is for any planning application, as far as I am aware. Everybody gets good notice of the application. They go up on the website for members of the public, parish councils and councillors to be able to comment on. Notices go in the newspaper, site notices go up. I mean, I've got at least one in my ward at the moment. And just before lockdown, the site notices went up. There was something in the Halstead Gazette. Neighbours got their usual notification by letter. And there is the opportunity to put comments on the website. So it's covered as far as I'm concerned. The consultation is as good on reserve matters as it should be. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Councillor Spray, for coming back. Now I'm going back to my list, which is not horrendously long, but I would remind members that these are questions you're supposed to be asking. My first person is Councillor Unsworth.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Councillor Spray, I've two questions for you. During the debate earlier, it was stated, and you just stated, that 85 sites of the 350 houses put through for the selection. were adopted and may well be reviewed. Can you confirm that the same level of rigour will be applied that's already been applied, that discounted a lot of these sites that people are worried about, the thousands of houses in Gosfield that were discounted because they were too close to the river, and the same level of rigour will be applied to any sites that are further reviewed to alleviate the worries that a lot of these councillors are demonstrating?
Councillor Spray.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. Thank you, Councillor Unsworth. Yes, you're referring to, if you mean if we need to revisit sites to allow for some additional numbers in section 2. I'm assuming that's what you mean.
Yes, correct. I've got a second question as well.
Yeah, thank you. Well, I'll just deal with that one. Yes, absolutely. Regardless of whether there will have to be a call for new sites, which, as I say, we are getting advice on, or whether we revisit previously discounted sites, either way, they will come before the local plan subcommittee and be subject to debate. Members of the public, other councillors can register to speak at those meetings, and it will then make recommendations which will go forward to full council for debate. Yes, there will be full rigorous debate on all of those. Nothing will get just waved through, I can assure you. Thank you. Would you like to give me your second?
No, apparently I'm not allowed to ask you about a particular site, although I did warn you, so I'll leave it till next time.
Thank you very
well,
much.
actually, Chairman, I can just very quickly to say, I know what you're talking about, Councillor Unsworth, and I appreciate you giving me a heads up about it earlier. It's an enforcement matter, as you know, so it wouldn't be appropriate for me to go into any detail at this public meeting, but it did give me the opportunity, since you flagged it up, for me to speak to officers later this afternoon, and I can assure you it is on their radar, and they are well aware of the situation on the site, and it hasn't been forgotten about. I think that's probably the fullest answer I can give you. Thank you
very much.
Thank you very much. Councillor Sandham. Councillor Sandham.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. So we welcome the new verge cutting policy from Cabinet Member for Environment and Place, as we've been pressing for a new policy to protect verge wildflowers. But will there be consultation with parishes about areas they wish to nominate to be protected which are not on the initial list? And I've just got an example from Fearing, which I took last week, to see if that comes out. That's a verge, it's going up a slope in Fearing, and you can see the bit that's been cut going up the slope all along is brown and dead. And then there's a part of it, which you can see at the edge, where the lady who lives opposite goes out to protect it every year. And there you can see it's green and there's poppies growing up. And then if you go along, that's the bit that she protects every year. So it's not coming out into the road, and there's no particular need to cut it.
And your question is?
So that's the question. Will we be able to consult with parishes on areas like this that could be left?
Thank you. Who would take that? Councillor Butland or Councillor Spray?
Councillor Schmidt.
Oh, Councillor Schmidt. How very nice to see you.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I've been waiting for this one. As it's late, I won't go through the whole rigmarole, but members will know for many, many years I have been trying to get the county to change its policy on grass verges. Last year, I managed on the A131 to do that small section, which was a great success. As I said, the problem has been county, not us. I want to do it, county didn't want to do it. As I said, I won't go into long details. You all know what it is. So finally, I have got them to allow me to have a trial. So we picked an area, and the particular area we picked is a good compact size. It covers rural, it covers semi-rural and urban areas. Because of where it is across the middle of the district, it's easier for our staff to monitor it. Because obviously we want to look at litter levels, all sorts of things to see how it works. And it follows in logical sequence with our cutting programme anyway. Now, this is a trial that I've fought for years for. I've got some comments like, Councillor Hickson talking to brick walls come to mind. I'm not sure whether that's me, county, or who he was referring to. But he was talking about a verge that wasn't in the trial area. So those that aren't in the trial area will have their twice annual cut, the way it has always been until I have started this battle. Particular areas, I've had comments like Councillor Sandham's just mentioned. Speak to your county councillor. You can have special areas designated. That's up to your county councillor to get done. A particular area, I know Councillor Abbott was upset, was cut. White Campion's gone. I've got plenty in my garden. I'll happily get you seed to plant it. If that verge was so important, you as county councillor could have got it to be a special area which wouldn't be cut. That is your job as county councillor. As I said, I've worked very, very hard on this. I've had lots of compliments from certain parishes and areas. We will see how it goes. I hope that finally I've got the message home at County Council, the importance of leaving grass verges alone in the spring when flowers are set in seed, when they're there for the insects. And so it isn't anything new, Councillor Sandham. I have been working on this for years. It's County Council who are in charge of highways and verges, not BDC. I have won part of the battle and I will carry on till I've won the whole battle. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Schmidt. Now, I have Councillor Weeks. Do you still have something to say, Councillor Weeks?
Hello, yes.
Hello.
Hello. Hello. Thank you, Madam Chairman. I'd like to speak to Wendy Schmidt as well, please, if that's possible.
I'm
Got a
sure
question.
she will answer anything you ask.
Thank you.
Go ahead.
Please, can you confirm that the council is committed to retaining the green waste collections, which are both popular with the residents and needed to help maintain high levels of recycling and waste minimisation? Thank you.
Councillor Schmidt, will you go for that?
Of course. Why wouldn't we? It's a strange question to ask. It's a service we do not have to provide, but one that we have chosen to provide, and we will continue to do so.
Thank you very
Lovely.
much.
Thank you.
All right. Councillor McKee, I have you.
Yes, thank you. It's not a question, Chairman. It's just that I'd like to just correct Councillor Butland's report, only because of timing, particularly around Manor Street. And there's a comment in there about UK Power Networks being on, they're now on site, and the programme is on track due to that. A lot of pressure was brought to bear on UK Power Networks, but they're now on site and have moved that particular item on the site, and so it's back on track. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I just want to double check. Councillor Schmidt, was there something else you wanted to say apart from receiving questions?
Indeed, Madam Chairman.
Please go. That's fine.
Councillor Butland was going to pass it on to me, but forgot to. But first of all, I have a mea culpa. On item 2.5, I perhaps suffering from lockdown brain, I put that I'd be sending a revised timetable for the delivery of the new air quality strategy. That, of course, is actually the climate strategy. So my mea culpa for that. But also, what I'd like to tell members is that despite all of the challenges that our amazing operations team have been having to do over the last 11 weeks plus, they have still found time to continue the work that I said we would do on looking at the Tetra Pak recycling bring bank scheme. And I'm pleased to tell you that all things being equal, on the 22nd of June, we will be opening Tetra Pak recycling bring banks. 13 of them will be in existing sites. We have looked at 4 others, which we're still just finalising details with landowners. At the end of the week, I will send out an email to all members telling you where these sites will be and whether we're still on stream for the 22nd of June. And of course, if that's the case, then we will be doing plenty of media coverage to let the public know. Thank you, Madam Chairman.
Thank you very much. I have now Councillor Abbott has asked to speak, followed by Councillor Everard.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Yes, to Councillor Mrs. Smith. Firstly, obviously, we very warmly welcome the news on the Tetra Pak bring back sites, as it's something we suggested, and very glad to see the administration taking it up. But on the verges, as Councillor Schmidt named me, can I gently suggest that the issue of the verges is not a personal crusade for Councillor Schmidt. It's something we all need to be working on. And as a member of the County Council, she will know, I've stood up many times and raised it at County Hall. The question Councillor Sandon was asking was, how do we widen this? How do we have more verges included? And we're going to do that by having dialogue between district members, parish councils, county councillors. So I just feel that, you know, that the attitude she took in the answer wasn't helpful. The fact is, I personally cannot stop verges being cut in the areas I represent unless we have agreements between the various authorities. It's not up to me as a county councillor to do that, even though I'd love to do so.
Thank you very much. Councillor Schmidt, do you want to come back on that? Or not?
Not really, Madam Chairman. I did my bit at County Hall where I finally embarrassed them into letting me go ahead with this. You know, I would have liked lots of support on it. We're where we are. Succeeded and we'll continue.
Right, thank you. I'm going to call verges to an end. Councillor Everard has something to say. Councillor Thorogood? I'm sorry, Councillor Everard. Councillor Everard, unmute your microphone.
I pressed it twice.
Off you go then.
Okay, I hope this fits in. A question on item 4, supporting committees. With the gradual relaxation of restrictions on COVID, I'm concerned that there might be a lack of toilets available to the public in our towns. Of course, we don't have any public toilets in Braintree, but is there anything in place to monitor this? Thank you.
To help with the flow, you mean?
Well, is there any anything in any procedures to yeah procedures? Yes.
Right, I think we're going to call ourselves to order a bit here. Thank you, Councillor Butland. Do you wish to make any comment, or Councillor Schmidt?
Well, just to congratulate you on what must be the speech of the evening. But clearly, in terms of public toilets, I mean, we will be guided by government and scientific advice on that. And you, Councillor Everard, will be aware that even if you're visiting a family home, etc., you know, and you're out in the garden, you should be very wary when using toilets. So I think at this moment, there's not a lot that we as a council can do. And I suspect that a number of retailers who normally have toilets open will in fact have them closed. I think it's just at the moment one of those things. And
Yeah.
so I don't think it would be right for us to be trying to pressurize any retailer or establishment into opening their toilets at this stage.
Thank you
I
very
think
much.
you have to plan ahead, if I can put it that way.
Most definitely.
You do take my point. Yeah, thank you.
Councillor Thorogood? Councillor Thorogood, you
No,
wanted to say?
I believe I've already asked a question. That
Oh,
was
have you?
earlier.
You've
Yeah.
come up again then. Councillor Pell?
Thank you, Madam Chairman. This is very brief. It's coming to the end of the evening. It's regarding keeping members informed. On behalf of House of Residents Association, I really would like to thank the leader and the officers for keeping us totally informed. There's nothing that we haven't been told that is a secret. It is there for us all to know. And I also like to thank the trainers for all the work that they've put in to reach us to this point where we can have a virtual council meeting with the public listening in. And a lot of work has gone into that. So people like me was very much a novice when this started, and I've learned a lot. So thank you very much.
Yes, I hear. I second that, and I'm sure absolutely everybody seconds that. Well done, Mrs. Pell. Thank you. Now, I'm calling that to an end. Yes, I am. Thank you very much, Councillor Butland and Councillor Schmidt and Councillor Spray and the others. We're now going to proceed to item 13, which is the recommendation from Cabinet, 28th of May, Horizon 120 infrastructure. And before we proceed to the consideration of this item, I'd like to make a few points of general note. For this item and item 15, there is an additional report which was circulated to all councillors. It contains the recommendation from Cabinet following its meetings held on the 28th of May. So item 13, pages 46 to 54 of your agenda, has a corresponding report within the private session. Item 15, pages 55 to 64 of your agenda. Now, as members will be aware, generally, the Council seeks to operate in an open and transparent way with as much information as possible in the public domain. But from time to time, for a number of reasons, in this case, our Council's commercial interests, it is important that key elements of information are kept confidential. The confidential elements are contained in the private report and indicated with text which is marked in both bold and italics. It's often the case that members can debate the substantive issues surrounding the proposals without the need to specifically refer to the confidential elements. So given this, I would usually intend to keep the debate open and public. However, if any member feels it's necessary to raise specific points on the confidential elements, we will need to move into private session. This will, if required, mean stopping the broadcast of this meeting via the Council's YouTube channel. So given all of that, if any member now intends to raise elements in the debate about the private information, then I would appreciate an early indication to ease the administration of this meeting. So now, do any members intend to raise confidential matters during the debate on this item? Please indicate via the chat function. I have Councillor Abbott who wishes to speak on item 15. Councillor Abbott?
That's correct, Madam Chairman, when we go into private session.
Right. So thank you then. As members have indicated that they wish to raise confidential matters relating to items 13 and 15, as item 13 is the last business item in public session, I will now ask for the meeting to move into private session.
Madam Chairman, can I suggest we go through item 13 first, where the detail can be presented for the public to listen to on the webcast and on the YouTube, and then close it, and I'll then go through the numbers that I think are in the second session and allow Councillor Abbott to ask any questions he wishes. I think it would be better for the openness that we are seeking. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. Councillor Abbott, what do you think to that?
No, absolutely, Madam Chairman. I thought that's what we were going to do.
Right. So I'm going to conclude the public part of this meeting.
No, sorry, Chairman, to intervene. We are remaining in public session for members to consider agenda item 13. And when members have concluded that item, we will then move into private session.
Okay.
But the guidance to members is that you must not disclose any of the confidential information that's in the agenda item 15 report or the minute extract report in support of agenda item 15. Chairman, I hand back to you. Thank you, Chairman.
All right. Well, I hope I know what I'm doing. So am I looking? can I have your agreement that under section 100A(4) of the Local Government Act 1972, the report on this debate in a minute will be considered private? And I want an agreement by silence. So I'm looking for silence.
Madam Chairman, if we could take that vote at the appropriate time, if we could have the public debate now, and then we'll move into private session after.
So exactly where am I going from at this point?
Chairman, would you like to invite Councillor McKee to introduce his report as
Fine.
set out on page in agenda item 13?
Thank you very much for the help. Can I invite then Councillor McKee to introduce the report and move the recommendations which are set out on the separate minute recommendation report? Councillor McKee, sorry for my mess up, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you, Chairman. And I won't take long, given the hour, as they say. Good evening. I'm delighted to present this report to Council this evening regarding the budget for the completion of the infrastructure development at the employment site at Great Notley. Colleagues will remember.
Sorry, carry on.
Colleagues will remember that this site was originally allocated in the local plan over a decade ago to be developed as an employment site alongside the residential site at Notley Garden Village. A private developer was unwilling or unable to proceed with the development, and the employment opportunity was not delivered. Now is the time for us to put that right. On May 28th, the Cabinet reviewed and discussed the report in your papers originally, item 13, pages 46 to 54, and the Cabinet approved the 3 recommendations. Since the last report to Cabinet and Council, a local development order has been finalised and adopted, earthworks have commenced, and the land transaction authorised by Cabinet on the 2nd December 2019 has completed. Prior to COVID-19 crisis, 5 companies had agreed terms for bespoke buildings. Unfortunately, since that time, 1 company has withdrawn. The remaining 4 companies are committed and will require buildings to be delivered within the next 18 months. The current requirements will utilise approximately 12 acres. The Horizon 120 development is being actively marketed by 2 local agents via a website, details of which were again in your original papers. Inquiries are still being generated, albeit at a reduced level during the lockdown period. The earthworks are being undertaken by Balfour Beatty and have commenced on site. Balfour Beatty have completed the detailed technical design and are now seeking at least 3 tenders for every subcontract package, and have now obtained quotations for connections to statutory utilities. The infrastructure was 3 stages: feasibility complete, stage 1, which is they're on site now doing and will be completed this month. Stage 2, infrastructure, which includes the northern highways, junction, estate roads, landscaping, and statutory utilities. Following the appointment of Balfour Beatty for the earthworks, considerable due diligence, including negotiations with the statutory utilities, has resulted in an estimated capital cost for the complete infrastructure. These figures have been included in a revised financial model and are estimated maximum external costs. Strategic investment team have considered several options, and it would be possible to delay the infrastructure work or to only complete the minimum required immediately. However, there are compelling reasons why this would not be optimum nor advisable, and these are in your papers. There are additional risks arising from proposals set out in section 4 of the report. The Council received a business case for Horizon 120 on the 19th of February 2019, and a capital budget was approved to progress a phased delivery of infrastructure works, and was reviewed again and reported to full Council on 22nd July 2019. When an increase in the capital budget for infrastructure was approved, this included provision for a second access to the site. The Council has now received updated cost estimates provided by Balfour Beatty, which have taken into account proposal to increase the scope of infrastructure works and to complete them in a single phase. Compared to February 2019, the scheme cost estimates are higher for infrastructure works due to increased scope of works and generally higher costs, professional and other fees. The Council both had the opportunity and responsibility to realise the potential of Horizon 120, achieving what the private sector working alone failed to deliver over the preceding 10 years, and tonight is the final step to agreement to complete the infrastructure project, unlocking the Horizon 120 site. The recommendation approved by Cabinet last week to increase the budget requires your approval this evening. So the recommended decision, and I move this for your decision, the Council approves the scheme budget of Horizon 120 be increased. I so move.
Thank you, Councillor McKay. Councillor McKay has moved the recommendations. So can I please have a seconder on screen? Someone be a seconder, please.
Madam Chairman, if I may,
yeah.
As there are a number of questions to be answered under the private session, if we could look to move the report once we've moved into private session and had that debate around the private and confidential information.
But I still need a seconder.
Seconded, Madam Chairman.
Thank you very much, Councillor Butland. Okay, so we are now going into private session. Is that what you said?
We need to take the vote around the private session, Madam Chairman.
Right. I need to take a vote around the private session, and I will take silence as your agreement. Right. Silence has agreed. So I'm concluding the public part of the meeting. This time, 10:25, and I'll hand over to the meeting facilitator to move this meeting into private session.
Thank you, members. Thank you, members. If you could just pause one moment and not turn your microphones on whilst we move into private session. Please can the webcast officer confirm